Well, thanks. I want to welcome everybody to the November meeting of Manhattan CB1 Transportation Street Activity Permit Committee. I'm Betty Kay, the chair of the committee. I'm joined by Jess Coleman, the co-chair, as well as by Onej James, who is representing the office. And today we're one short of quorum, so we won't be doing any voting until at least one more person shows up.
I think Eric is coming.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that we're expecting other people. But anyway, we can start with the first agenda item, which I'm not anticipating to have a resolution for. And that is New York City Ferry contract with the Hornblower Group. And again, this is a repeat contract. Hornblower was who the previous contract was with. So I'm gonna introduce, this is an update. I updated this slide. Anyway. Diana, welcome back after a decade, and thank you, Matt, for joining so we can learn more from perspective of New York City Ferry, which is one of my favorite groups, so thank you.
Do you want us to come up to the front?
You can go wherever you like, as long as you speak to the owls, those two things are where the voices and cameras are.
Okay, then maybe I'll
You can stay
I
put, or you can move to a chair at the table and do whatever
okay,
you
I'll
like.
do that. Yeah, and if you could pull up Onej the deck, yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody, good to see you. I'm just gonna give it one sec. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. I think most of you know me, but if you don't, my name is Diana Sweetai. Hi, Onej. I work in EDC's Government and Community Relations Division, covering Lower Manhattan and Staten Island. I'm here with my colleague Matt, who's a senior vice president from our New York City Ferry team. Like Betty said, we're here this evening to discuss the new contract for the New York City Ferry system. So we have a deck that Matt's going to go through that outlines the details of the new contract term. And then I know Tammy specifically called out some environmental questions for the ferry system as well. So we're happy to discuss that during Q&A.
Great. Well, thank you, Diana. And thank you all for having us here today. I just want to start off by saying that Lower Manhattan is really central to a lot of what we do at NYC Ferry. And just to put a couple data points behind that, almost half of NYC Ferry riders ride NYC Ferry to or from Wall Street Pier 11. So it's really the central point of our system. And the Battery Park City Terminal, while relatively small, it's our fastest growing landing of all of our landings in our entire network. And ridership for Battery Park City Terminal grew by more than 39% this year compared to last year. So it's really growing. We're really excited about the numbers we're seeing in Lower Manhattan. And we appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak today. As was mentioned, our focus today is going to be on the new NYC Ferry operating contract, which is with the Hornblower Group, who also operated NYC Ferry under the last contract. We can move to that. Oh, actually, this is a good page. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on the system in case some of you aren't entirely familiar with NYC Ferry. So NYC Ferry, as it currently exists, was launched in 2017. It operates all year round with 6 routes citywide at 25 landings in all 5 boroughs. EDC owns a fleet of 38 purpose-built vessels that are maintained and operated by our operating partner, the Hornblower Group. And we store those vessels at our Brooklyn Navy Yard across the waterfront. And some good news overall as a system. This year, we are actually we're exceeding pre-COVID ridership levels. And we have some of the greatest ridership recovery across the entire US in terms of large transit systems. The Urban Institute came out with a report recently that ranked NYC Ferry as having the 3rd highest ridership recovery of all transit systems in the US. So we're in a really good spot right now in terms of recovery. Moving on to the next page. So last year, Mayor Adams and EDC announced what we call the Ferry Forward Plan, which strives to make NYC Ferry more equitable, accessible, and financially sustainable. And there have been some major wins that we've had so far. So I just want to take a moment to share some of those. Next page, please. So a major change enacted as a part of Ferry Forward was a change in fare policy, which went into effect last September 2022. As a part of those changes, you may have seen that we increased our base fare from $2.75 to $4. But for regular commuters, we still allowed access to the same $2.75 fare by starting to sell a 10-pack of tickets that cost $27.50. So if you're a commuter riding NYC Ferry, you didn't experience any type of fare change. We also really expanded our discount programs. So previously, in order to access discount programs, you had to buy a monthly pass. We found a lot of people weren't signing up for monthly passes. So we made it so that you could access discount tickets for single one-trip tickets. And we introduced a program where you could purchase a one-trip ticket for $135 if you are a senior, a person with a disability, or if you participate in the New York City Fares program. That program has been a big success so far. We've had over 10,000 signups for the program, and the first 9 months of this year, we've sold over 75,000 discounted tickets. We've also tried to innovate with some of our service offerings. So we introduced a Rockaway Reserve service that allows people to reserve seats on dedicated Pier 11 to Rockaway's vessels. And we also introduced a similar service originating from Brooklyn called the Rockaway Rocket, where you can take it from Brooklyn Bridge Park to the Rockaways as well. So that's been a big success so far. And we've really increased the level of transparency that we have in response to some of the feedback that we previously received from members of the community. And we now routinely make detailed financial, ridership, and subsidy information available online to anyone who wants to access it. And we post our ridership data regularly on NYC Open Data as well. So we're really proud with what we've been able to accomplish over the last year. One of the big components of Ferry Forward was re-procurement of our operating contract. So if you can go to the next page. And in September of last year, we released a public request for proposals for our ferry operator contract. We received multiple responses to that request, and EDC determined that the proposal from our from our previous operator, Hornblower, was best positioned to meet our goals. Those goals include ensuring a safe, reliable, and accessible transit service, reducing costs, improving EDC oversight, improving the rider experience, and promoting MWBE businesses and NYC Ferry as a maritime career pipeline. You can go to the next page. So Hornblower's qualifications are strong. They operate leisure and transportation ferries across the globe, including in the New York Harbor for the National Park Service. And they are also the operator of the first all-electric ferry in the US, which runs in Alabama. They offered a tech-forward and feature-rich proposal that will result in tangible benefits for NYC Ferry riders and offer EDC further insight into the system. They also had a really strong community support and community elements to the proposal. And their proposal included over 60 letters of recommendations from local businesses and community and civic organizations. We know that Hornblower is committed to investing in their employees to build a maritime career pipeline, creating good jobs that have competitive salary and benefits. They are also deeply committed to internal promotions and career advancement. One example is Taisha Brooks, who's pictured on the upper left there. She joined NYC Ferry in 2021 as a deckhand with no previous maritime experience. And she went through a lot of Hornblower training programs, and she is now a licensed ferry captain for NYC Ferry. Hornblower puts frequent training to use to keep the harbor safe through in-water rescues and through their proactive and regular engagement with the public. Since the launch of NYC Ferry, they've participated in over 1,200 community events, including extensive volunteer work. So moving on to the details of our next contract. Our next contract has a 5-year initial term. EDC has the option to extend the contract for an additional 6 years via 2 3-year contract extension options. It requires the operator to operate and maintain the ferries. Basically, if you get on an NYC ferry boat, anyone who's working on that boat is an employee of Hornblower, not EDC. On the back end, they're responsible for all the maintenance that goes on in the boats. As you might imagine, boats require a lot of maintenance, so they're responsible for the maintenance. They also do the marketing, customer service, community outreach. One of the things we're excited about in their proposal is they're going to hire a dedicated NYCHA outreach coordinator to work with NYCHA residents. They had a very strong proposal in terms of their MWBE commitments, the strongest of all the respondents. They have a 15% MWBE goal, which translates to about $60 million that they'll invest in MWBE owned businesses in New York over the next 5 years, which is a pretty big number when you think about how historically non-diverse ownership of maritime businesses is in the New York Harbor. So we're very excited about that. They also committed to providing at least 10 internships annually for students in New York City maritime programs, including in DOE schools like the Harbor School on Governor's Island. We're excited about that. And while we don't have any immediate plans to build new vessels, this contract does allow us to build new vessels, and it allows us to use Hornblower as our construction partner for those new vessels. And the contract also requires Hornblower to work with us to develop plans for the reduction of emissions for our fleet, including studying areas such as vessel electrification, alternate low or zero emissions fuels, or other reduction technologies. As a part of this next contract, New Yorkers can also expect some public-facing upgrades on the New York City ferry system. There will be important accessibility upgrades to help riders get real-time schedule and stop information in multiple formats, as well as tools to help riders better plan their journeys, such as real-time onboard seat and bike availability, meaning that if you're sitting at a landing and there's a long line, you can get on the app and get a good estimate on how many seats will actually be available on the boat before it arrives. And by the end of this year, we'll begin providing free onboard Wi-Fi on NYC ferries, which we're excited about as well. So I'll conclude the presentation by sharing some what I think is good news about the financials of our next agreement. We're pleased that under this next agreement, we'll be able to achieve a more financially efficient system. That's despite the fact that consumer price inflation has been over 30% compared to where it was since we signed our original agreement. Despite that, we've really been able to keep costs relatively similar. There are a few data points on this page that will help me illustrate that point. So on the left-hand side, you can see that our net operator expenses per an hour of service. So this is for every hour of ferry service, how much it costs EDC on a net basis to run service. That's gone down by more than 30% compared to where it was a few years ago. And under this next contract, we're going to be able to keep it at that reduction, that level of 30% reduction. One of the big ways we've been able to achieve that is by generating more revenue from the system. That's related to things like growing our ridership. It's related to those the fare changes that we discussed earlier, but it's also related to our new contract. Under our last contract, it was the operator, Hornblower, who retained pretty much all of the revenue associated with advertising, with things like concessions that are sold on board. In this next contract, we retain all that revenue. Not all of the revenue, we retain a portion of the revenue. And the other big change in the next contract is in the last contract, Hornblower kept most fare revenue. In the next contract, EDC is basically going to keep all fare revenue. So because it was a competitive procurement, we were able to get a really good deal for the city. And what that translates to on the right-hand side of this page is that We expect that we're going to be able to bring down the subsidy per rider by about 35% compared to where it was pre-COVID, and keep it at a pretty stable level. And that's even without making additional fare changes compared to where they are today. So we're really thrilled about the outcome of the procurement, and we're happy to answer any questions either related to procurement or anything else that you might have related to NYC Ferry. Yes.
I have a big, broad question. It really doesn't have anything to do, I guess, with this new contract. But long ago, I heard from someone, when I was actually, where he was a reporter about at MTA, that there might be someday a world, a New York City, where ferries and MTA fare payment system and also seamless transfers would be, basically that the ferry system would be integrated into the MTA. Or at least in some form or fashion, because we are a water city, it just makes perfect sense. And so, is that just something that, like, is just not gonna happen ever? Or do people talk about that? I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
So it is something that we talk about, and I'm sure you're all familiar with like coordination between city agencies and MTA, which is state controlled, is not always like seamless and easy.
Right.
So it takes a bit more time anytime you're involving the state. So that's a reality that we deal with. We have been in, very active discussions with MTA about getting on the Omni system. There are various sort of approaches or how far you could go with things like fare integration or fare acceptance. One is just like being able to use the same Omni card to pay for the MTA or pay for NYC Ferry or pay for the air train. That's like one form. The other, which is more what you're talking about, is like real fare integration, where if you take a subway and you want to do a transfer to the NYC Ferry, you can transfer to the NYC Ferry for free because you already paid subway fare. Most of our conversations for the short to medium term has really been focused on more of the fare acceptance, because integration is a bit trickier to solve.
Right.
But it is something that I would definitely not say it's never going to happen. It's challenging, it's difficult, but we are having those conversations on how to get there.
Very cool. Good to know.
Yes.
Well, just before I ask my question, I agree 100% with Cody, and technology is there for the integration.
Yeah.
So
It's a political.
You're being very diplomatic and nothing directed to you, and we love Diana, but it's there. So it's just a matter of they want to do it or not. So that's no excuse. Number two, I guess, for the majority of people going to Wall Street, the fare increase, that's no big deal. But the single ticket riders, the people that just have to use it because of where they live, when I see an increase from $2.75 to $4 is crazy. And I'm really happy your financials are going to look better this year. So that to me tells, and I say you, I don't mean you personally, your justification, the justification doesn't seem congruous to the fare increase for single tickets. Because sometimes those people that might live out in the Rockaways that are not going to Wall Street, they can't lay out $27.50 or the monthly. So I'm probably talking to the wall, but if there's any way to reevaluate that, those things kind of just stick out to me.
So thank you for those comments. You're right. And we're aware of that. One of the things that was important to us when we increased the fares was to expand our discount program. We realized that not everyone could access the discount
But that's
program.
competing the customers against each other. And that's another thing that kind of makes my hair stand up.
Yeah, but you're right. It's something we think about. We evaluate the equity
Some of the
considerations.
40% increase.
So we'll continue thinking about it anytime we make those types of decisions in the future.
Okay.
Any other hands in the room?
Yeah. I enjoy taking the ferry. I've taken it recently, and it's a pleasure. Fresh air. I mean, but I guess it'll be more.
Online has lost sound.
I can hear you, but I can't hear them.
passenger. The strength of it, and I hope that this continues, is you serve areas that are not served by the MTA. Like areas in the outer boroughs, like let's say Fort Totten in Queens, where that is city-owned property, and there are 2 bus lines that serve it. So I mean, those are I think those are synergistic, where it could be part of like a whole network of providing transportation options for people throughout the city. And I think at least you offered a 275 option, but you have to buy 10, which I did. So it is safe and convenient, although I'm only saying that because we live, around Wall Street, ferry terminal, but just continue with what you're doing and growing it. I actually enjoyed it a few times taking it. You mentioned that the renewal of the Hornblower contract. What's the duration of this contract proposed?
Yeah, so the next contract, which actually started last month, it started on October 1st. The initial term is 5 years. At the end of those 5 years, EDC has the option to extend 2 times. Each of those extensions would be 3 years each. So it's up to 11 years, but the first term is only 5.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious what the current fare of electrification and hybridization of the ferries is for Hornblower.
Yeah, so as you might know, electrification and hybridization, just fundamentally, it's pretty difficult on the water. There are some areas that have been able to move further towards that. Governor's Island is in CV1, so I'm sure you're all very familiar with what's going on with Governor's Island and their new ferry, which will come out next year. I just want to use that ferry as like a starting point to discuss the challenges of doing it on the NYC ferry system. So Governor's Island is a point-to-point system. It goes from point A to point B. It goes 10 nautical miles per hour. It's a very slow, very big ferry. It serves 1,200 passengers. When you have a big boat like that, you could store really big batteries. And when you have a point A to B system, you could go from point A, dock at point B, recharge those batteries some, and then go back across to the other side. That boat also, as I said, it only operates at 10 nautical miles per hour. So just the energy demands are a bit different. Contrast that to the NYC ferry system, where we have 25 landings across all 5 boroughs. Our boats are high-speed vessels. They operate at least twice the speed of the Governor's Island's new boat. And there's just like a lot more complication there. There's a lot more distance to travel. So it will be inherently, based off our system characteristics, more challenging to do on NYC ferry than something like Governor's Island. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to do anything and that we're just going to say, oh, no, it can't be done. So things that we are going to do. One is it was very important for us that this contract compels Hornblower to work with us and think about, okay, despite all those challenges, what can we do? As I mentioned earlier, Hornblower is actually the first provider of an all-electric ferry in Alabama, so they have some experience here. And we are committed over the next several years to start that long-term planning process. The other thing I would say, as just a baseline, NYC Ferry is actually a lot better positioned, despite those geographic elements, compared to a lot of other ferry systems in the US based off of our current carbon footprint. So we purchased all of our boats within the last 7 years, which means all of our boats meet the EPA's highest emission standards, Tier 3 and Tier 4 standards, which went into effect in the mid-2010s. We also use like pretty small boats with small engines that are more fuel efficient than a lot of other ferry systems in the US. So our boats burn half as much fuel as a comparable system per an hour as something like the San Francisco Bay Ferry. So I say this not to say, oh, we're in a good spot. We're not in a good spot. Carbon emissions are bad. We don't want them, but we're not starting from as bad of a spot as many other ferry providers. So we're going to work towards it. It's probably going to be expensive. I don't know if you've ever talked to Governor's Island about how expensive the ferry was, but it's important to New York and it's important to the world that we do something about it.
Yeah, well, I think the whole point of hybrid is that you're not going to reduce emissions, especially if you have such a, high knot you have to travel at and, a long distance you have to go. The whole point of hybrid is to reduce that, even if it's just a small chunk of your emissions. So I think the fact that hornblowers boats travel a long distance and have to go fast isn't really a reason that they shouldn't go electric. I know we're early, but it would be great if given the EDC's power in contracting, you could incentivize electric ferries so that New York City could be a pilot of this technology, as it's expensive now, because you have to have that initial investor in order for the prices to go down for everyone else.
Yeah, we agree with you, and we actually just hired a new fleet manager recently who's, very excited to push this forward, so.
Wait, 1 second.
Thank you.
Can I clarify one point? Isn't New York City actually, the EDC, the owner of the vehicle, of the boat? So-
Yes,
So it's not Hornblower that owns the boat. Any price for transitions is gonna be done by the EDC.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not Hornblower's money.
I understand.
Okay, so that's not a factor for them holding them back, one would think. But that is, sorry, I recognize you.
No, I had a technical issue because I didn't know if our video had gone off, but just because it's still on.
Yeah.
And I see Tammy has her hand up.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. The people with their hands up, because I know Mary Ann's been waiting probably the longest.
Justine and Tammy. Marianne.
Tammy usually likes to go after she's heard from other people, so let Mary Ann speak is the longest, and then Justine and Tammy.
Marianne, you want to unmute? There you are. All right.
Made mention of a lower fare for seniors, and you use the word apply for. How does a senior make that application?
yeah, so the easiest way to do it is to go to our website, ferry.nyc. And in, I believe, the ticketing section, you can find an application for the discount program.
You wouldn't
Okay,
accept the senior card that people already have it for the MTA as kind of like a, what's that? It's been in our state. If somebody already has the senior program in one of the other things, you wouldn't like reciprocate?
Yeah, so the way it works is in order to access the discount tickets, you need to be registered in the system. In order to register in the system, you need to verify eligibility. We do accept cards like that for eligibility verification,
Okay,
but you do need, the way our system works is you need to get registered in the system.
and then once that's done on the website, like I would normally get my ferry ticket from an app on the phone.
Yep.
Would like the new fare be visible to me to choose if I'm riding a ferry?
That's exactly right. So once you get registered in the system, as long as the same email that you registered to register for the discount program is the email that you use to log into the app, it associates that email with your eligibility, and then a 135 fare appears in the purchase options for you.
And can I verify that it was actually very easy. First time that I went with a friend who in fact qualified as a senior, but is from a different state. She's not a local person. I claimed it under disability of elected for senior as well. It took no time. I mean, I did it all online, and I would plan on taking the trip an hour later. I had no problem getting the tickets online and on the app and just ordering. And it is very accessible. So I want to make that point too. Well, I have a point for Mimi as well. It's very accessible to get everywhere. Using my mobility scooter, I had no problems whatsoever. Second of all, being on the public bathroom working group, I can tell you all the stops I went to have very wonderful public bathrooms that are very clean on each of the docks or moorings that there are. So that's another big point that maybe people aren't aware of. It's very convenient from that perspective as well.
Good to hear.
Right. I know a lot of people that take the ferry and they refer to it as the civilized way to commute to the city. That's just a side now,
Yeah.
mostly because of the bathrooms.
I think that, Mary Ann, are you finished?
She's muted now, so.
Okay, then let me go to, I think Justine, the reason I look confused is I can see Pat Moore's name under you, it's just she's in a different square, but that's the name that appears under your face, Justine,
Right now?
on my screen. Well, because she's in a box and it's just her name on it, so.
Oh, okay, no problem, that's okay, no, I am here, my hand is raised, but I will wait my turn.
Yeah, no, it's your turn.
Sorry, okay. Quick question, thank you for this presentation, thank you for being here to talk about the New York Ferry for the Horn Blowers. I've got a question, and I apologize because I came in a little bit late. I'm assuming the ferry is stopping at the Brookfield Place dock, is that correct?
Yes, our St. George route stops at the Battery Park City Terminal.
Okay, that's very cool. Question for you, kind of on behalf of the folks in Staten Island. Is New York Ferry thinking of having another stop in Staten Island? Whether it's Mariners Cove or someplace else. I don't want to speak for where they need the transportation, but I believe New York City Ferry is not one of the boats that causes problems. And Betty, you can correct me if I'm wrong in terms of the noise and the vibrations. So thank you for that. And then the next question would be for our folks in Staten Island who do call this the fast ferry and the civilized ferry, as Mimi said. They want more, and not necessarily more out of St. George's, but more other places on the island, especially with congestion pricing coming in. They need more ways in and out of Manhattan.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. One of the things that we discussed earlier was our ferry forward plan. As some of you might know, it is expensive to provide NYC ferry service. Like, we've been reducing our subsidies, we've been reducing our expenses, but it is still relatively expensive relative to some other forms of public transit, like subway or local commuter bus. The reality is that most often when you expand to new locations, it drives costs up because just you have to travel more places incrementally. There might be fewer riders per an hour served. So right now, our focus is on stabilizing our finances as a part of Ferry Forward and optimizing our current system footprint. That's not to say there won't be a time in the near future, the medium-term future, where we do start thinking about expansion again, and other locations in Staten Island may be considered for that. But right now, we're really focused on best serving our current footprint.
And I'll just add to that, Justine, since I cover both Lower Manhattan and Staten Island, we speak to them often about lots of things, but one of the things that they raise is the ferry system, both in terms of access on the North Shore and then the West Shore as well, both connections from Staten Island to Manhattan and Staten Island to Brooklyn, which doesn't exist yet. So we just had a meeting with the Staten Island Borough President within the last few months. We speak to the community boards often, so we're well up to date on kind of what their highest needs are, and then based on availability, like Matt discussed, we're coordinating with them on that front, as we are with many other communities who also have high demand for new landings.
No, that makes sense. Thank you. And Diana, I can't see you, but nice to hear you. Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you have them on the radar screen, because that was something I heard and hear a lot from Staten Island folks. And so putting the word in that because the ferries, New York City Ferry is not a problem at Brookfield Place in terms of the vibrations or the sounds, 100% support more locations in Staten Island to have the usage better. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm going to apologize to Tammy. I want to tag on to something that Justine was just talking about. I noticed there's a new ferry route coming in from South Amboy, New Jersey, and they're specifically going on New York Waterway. They're going to Battery Park City Dock, and they are going to the Midtown Dock, which are two of the stops on your Staten Island ferry route. You've spoken, and they have very few. I think there's only like 2 or 3 stops in the morning and 2 or 3 in the evening. So obviously trying to hit the commuters at either end of the day. Have you ever spoken to any of these other groups like New York Waterway that they're sending people to one or the other, or maybe you could do some fill-in and help people advertise moving them
Yeah, so we do speak regularly with New York Waterway, and in fact, we actually partner and cooperate with them. So one of the things you mentioned was Pier 79 further up the Hudson. We actually have an agreement with New York Waterway where if you take an NYC ferry boat and get off at that stop, you can take the New York Waterway shuttle for free. So it's a really great service. We pay a little bit for it, but we think it benefits the customers a lot. And New York Waterway is also sort of responsible for maintenance of the pier at Battery Park City Terminal. So we coordinate and work with them on that as well.
Okay, because that would be another way of getting up ridership without having to add new stops.
Yep.
Anyway, Tammy, you've waited long enough, please.
No, you know how I roll. I do love for the people in the room to go first and the public. So I had a question. I saw on some of the finances and the stats and some of the other things. So the goal, according to the chart, was the subsidy per rider would drop by 2026 down to $7.50. In 2020, it started at $12.98. Can you tell us what the current at the end of 23 and into 24, it looks like there's going to be a jump up in the subsidy, and let us know the subsidy per rider. Why is it increasing for 2024?
Yeah, so you're very good at looking charts. Very good at looking at charts.
Oh, I have a few, so sorry.
There are answers to that question. So there are a few things going on. One is the cost of fuel. So as you might know, post-pandemic, fuel prices really cratered. And there was a point in time where for like futures fuel contracts, you could actually like get paid money in order to say, yes, I'm gonna receive fuel delivery in the future. So EDC, we have a hedging program where we do buy futures contracts for future fuel deliveries to stabilize our budget costs. Post-pandemic, we were able to buy a lot of futures contracts with really low fuel prices. Those really low fuel prices don't exist anymore since we're so far past the
I read
pandemic.
today that they're dropping a lot, like right around now.
Yeah, and as you know, constant fluctuations in fuel markets. So we're budgeting higher future fuel costs. The other reason why you see, and this is really getting technical, but you asked the question, so I'll answer. The other reason why you see a little bit of an increase for FY25 in that chart, in FY24 actually, is because under the last contract, the first few months of every year, our service was really artificially cheap because of the way we paid the operator. We only started paying the operator once we ran a certain number of service hours. So the first few months of the year where we hadn't hit those levels, we didn't have those extra payments. In this next contract, we're moving away from that system where we pay more evenly throughout the year. The difference, the way the fiscal years work in New York, which is July to June versus calendar years, sort of artificially created a lot of that bump that you see. So it's not like real cost increases. We'll see savings on the back end of the contract, but just due to this timing and cash flows, there's going to be a bit of a bump. So that's why you see it. This year, the subsidy per rider that we're probably going to be able to achieve is somewhere between $8.50 and $9 per rider for the most recently finished year.
Okay, so it's $8.50 to $9 currently, and then within a 2.5-2-year period, the hope is it drops to $7.50, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about? I mean, I'm not knocking the service, love the service, but it is one of the most highly subsidized services. So I'm going to ask next, of course, the next question I have is, what kind of percentages are we looking at in terms of capacity? On average, what are the peaks, what are the lows, and what kind of an occupancy percentage are you running on these routes?
Good questions. As you might know, and you might imagine, NYC Ferry is an incredibly seasonal service, where in the summer, we are often operating at near or above capacity. and we have left behind passengers who can't get on board. By contrast,
Don't worry, that's my next question about the summer stuff, so we'll get there. Okay, keep going.
by contrast, in the winter months, our boats oftentimes are nowhere near capacity. So if you get on a boat on the Rockaways route in the wintertime, for a 150 passenger boat, there might only be 30 to 40 other passengers on that boat. It's a trade-off that we're constantly thinking about and evaluating in terms of financial sustainability and our existence as a transit service and what is going to allow people to start choosing NYC Ferry as their transportation option. It's sort of if you don't build it, people will not come. So we do want to be a transit option. We do not want to be a seasonal ferry service. We do want to serve, as someone mentioned earlier, we do want to serve folks who live in the further away parts of the city, like the Rockaways or like the Bronx. And if we don't provide that winter service where you might not have very high capacity levels, you're not going to be serving those folks as well. So looking at our subsidy figures, which is $9 per year nowadays, if you look at just our core sort of central Lower East Side routes, East River route, our subsidy per rider is much higher. It's high because we serve those further field areas, because we provide service 365 days per year, 16 hours per day. So that's sort of a holistic answer. I don't know the exact number on occupancy right now. We could follow up with you if you want to.
We would really like to understand that, because when you say that the average subsidy drops, I assume that's based on a ridership level, and what would those targeted ridership percentages be, right? Because the more people on, I would assume is better revenue, and your subsidy would drop. Is that a correct analogy?
Ridership is one of it's the primary factor in reduction in subsidy per rider, but it's not the only factor. With the higher ridership, we've been able to maintain pretty stable costs. And in particular, in this next contract, the city and EDC are retaining a much larger share of other revenues that the system spits off, which also helps us decrease that public subsidy per rider.
Okay, and then that of course brings me to, yes, we'd love to see the ridership numbers per lines and things like that. If you can send that over, I'd love to see that. Data is always fun. And then the other question is, we did get complaints in the summer, which of course is your high season, that there just simply is not enough capacity to getting to the Rockaways, and people spent hours online. So my question is, looking ahead for the seasonal runs, especially long weekends, holidays, and quite frankly Thursday through Sunday, or anytime they have events out there, what kind of capacity increase is planned into this contract, and how will that information be getting out to the public?
Yeah, so this contract, one of the nice things about it is a variable contract that gives us greater ability to increase service or reduce service as conditions dictate. So we have a fleet of 38 vessels. When we originally bought that fleet, we had sized the fleet for up to about 10 to 11 million riders per year. Right now we're closer to 7 million riders. So we do have opportunity for growth based off of our fleet. We do have some bottlenecks and barriers to growth though. So as an example, one of those things is just the number of slips at Pier 11 and how Pier 11 is used by multiple different ferry companies and ferry services. So in the summertime, one of our bottlenecks is just being able to get boats into and out of Pier 11 fast enough and efficiently enough while still maintaining safety. That's always going to be an issue that sort of caps our ability to provide more service in the summer months without rebuilding Pier 11. So there are constraints there, but we do think there's some opportunity for additional service as ridership conditions dictate. And the other thing that I would say is this past summer, there were actually many fewer left behinds at Pier 11 going to the Rockaways. And there were many fewer people waiting in line than previous summers. If you have to be out at the landings this year relative to previous years to notice that, but that's what the data says. And one of the reasons why that is the case, two reasons why that's the case. One is because we did introduce the ability to reserve a ticket on those boats. People who really want to get there know that they can buy a ticket, get on that boat, and very quickly leave. So that's been a good thing. This past year, we also started providing service to the Rockaways going from Brooklyn Bridge Park, which took some people who would, take the subway, get off at Wall Street, and then walk down to Pier 11 and stand in lines there. Rather than doing that, they got on their bike in Brooklyn and rode over to Brooklyn Bridge Park or got off the subway there. We thought it was a very successful program, and one of the things we're thinking about next year is, are there other opportunities to run service to the Rockaways from other parts of New York City that might alleviate some of those congestion concerns that we have at Pier 11?
Perfect. So one of the boats was the perfect segue, because in the contract, it does say under the new build vessels that the contract allows for the operator to build vessels on EDC's behalf. So I did want to circle back on, the dialogue that started a little bit earlier. Oh, yay, the other camera now works. And hear about the expectation and dialogue is on that, because if EDC is giving the operator the opportunity to build vessels, much to like what we're talking about, how can we get into a better hybrid boat or electric boat mode, even on some of the runs versus none of the runs? I understand how complicated it is, and I understand that, yes, Governor's Island's boat will be on and long before you're ready to go, but that doesn't mean that in 11 years you couldn't be figuring out planning and scheduling and designing, simply because the contract is 11 years long potentially, and it does say that the operator could build vessels. We don't want to see more tier 3 and tier 4 diesel boats, really. We want to see something that's cleaner for both the water and the people. So I bring that back to you to ask. Nothing in here says anything about what kind of boats the contract allows. Do you have specs on that?
Yeah, so let me answer that a couple ways. One is that we have no plans to build any more diesel boats. We have enough diesel boats. We have 38 vessels. Those 38 vessels are more than enough to serve the footprint of our system. So we're not planning on building any more diesel boats. The second thing I would say on that is the contract allows for EDC to use the operator to build boats, but it's still ultimately, as we talked about earlier, it's EDC's and the city's decision. So if EDC and the city decide to invest in hybridization, if we decide to invest in electrification, that's our decision. It's not Hornblower's decision. So that's a policy choice that could be made and an investment that the city could decide to make or not. We don't need to rely on any private sector company to allow us to do that.
I'm excited to hear that, because the climate resiliency goals that were laid out by the city, which I assume that you're following, that have been well touted and well gone over, and the climate goals, the climate exchange over on Governor's Island, and all of the resiliency project that is part of the 5i Seaport Master Plan, which includes this section that we're talking about, and the rebuild for expansion on Pier 11 is based on the dialogue of moving away from diesel eventually, right? So the concern that I have from hearing the presentation is I have 11 years of diesel boats ahead of me and no plans for infrastructure change within at least a decade. And that's not befitting what we've been told for the last 5 years that the city is going towards. So I look at it as sort of a glaring hole in the middle. I'm super excited for the expansion. I'm a little bit suspect because it's still highly subsidized. Again, we just got to get more people on the boats. I get that. But on the other hand, I also think that if we're not making the moves to make it cleaner and greener, we're not following the roadmap that the city has laid out, because you've now contracted for 11 years of diesel. And I don't mean it to sound as negative as it does, but it's just what I see in the slides.
Yeah, so thank you for those comments. I think, fundamentally, we agree with all the comments that you're making. Our goal is to have a decarbonized fleet in the future, and we are not going to wait around 11 years before we do anything about it. And we do not need to wait around 11 years to do anything about it because we provide the boats. It's not Hornblower does. So if we want different boats, the city could invest in different boats.
Which then brings me back to, would there be any way that EDC would consider electrifying any part of Pier 11? You have to get infrastructure down there, and there's a lot of stuff that goes with it, even before we get to the FIDE CPR master plan and what that will be in the future. Is there any short-term studies that EDC can do to be able to shorten the availability to get the product? Got to have the battery, got to have the power somewhere, whether it's here in Lower Manhattan, or it's at one of the Brooklyn stops, or it's at a Staten Island stop, and figure out how to be able to charge them up. Have any studies been done by EDC on that yet?
I do not answer that question. I will go back to my colleagues and pass the question along to them.
And I can pretty much guarantee Diana's probably chuckling, knowing that I was coming to ask lots of questions tonight. So apologies.
To be expected. I thought we would get 100% able to answer all of them, but yeah, we'll follow up on that. Like you mentioned, FIDE Seaport envisions a new version of the pier and the landings, but I hear your question about the interim and the provision of electricity to support that transition. So happy to follow up, whether it's on the Manhattan side or in other boroughs on the status of that.
Especially when we take a look at what we're talking about with piers over on the west side. New York Waterways has advised us that they've applied for grants and they are working on getting hybrid boats. That pier in specific on the west side is as close to a residential building as it gets. And the density and bulk of what happens at that particular pier in relation to how close it is to residential housing and children's parks is unlike any place else that we have in the city for volume. So anywhere and anyhow that we can start this process is going to be better for everyone in New York City. And if we're going to walk the walk and talk the talk, it's got to start with EDC, unfortunately. Sorry. Yay, EDC.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to take any more hands because it's already been almost an hour. But I am going to, this may be more a rhetorical question because you may not have an answer. It may be just the interim warning for a future visit that I'd like to get. But we have congestion pricing coming in not that long, and we are in the zone. There will obviously be people we're encouraging to use mass transit to come in versus drive. So I'm interested in hearing, are you working on plans for how the ferry system will be capitalizing on that? One, to get the word out, and two, to get more information about what structures that people want, such as medical care and offices, are being advertised by the location to encourage people to see the significance of some of these locations.
Yes, so we do think about the effects that congestion pricing might have on demand for NYC ferry service. We imagine that the demand is going to go up, especially from some of our locations like Ferry Point Park in the Bronx, where there might be more commuters who are parking in parking lots nearby. and then taking the ferry down. And so we do have planners on staff who are evaluating that and evaluating any service changes that might demand. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is we do have quite a lot of flexibility in this next contract to increase service at pretty good rates. So if demand conditions warrant that we need more vessels, we will be able to provide more vessels and more service. So,
But I'm hoping we can even get some of the NYPD and firefighters to actually come out of Staten Island and Brooklyn and Queens and take mass transit instead of their cars.
that would be
So-
That's not gonna happen to Justine's point.
So I can help it. So thank you, and I look forward, as you have more of those details, yeah, if you let us know, because I'd be very interested in hearing some of the planning around congestion pricing.
Great.
What do you think? But thank you, you've been wonderful and been very generous with your time.
Thank you.
How fast is 10 nautical miles in car miles? That's what I want to
Basically
ask.
10 miles.
Yeah, it's very
10
similar.
miles an hour?
It's
Okay.
very similar.
That's all I want to know for my education, Betty.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Can we open this door?
Yeah, it's kind of warm.
I just wanted to
Yes,
ask,
it was open last night, the whole meeting.
I wasn't able to find on whether or not you can just
So thank you,
replace
and
the
the
engine.
next topic that we have is the 10th Street pedestrian plaza. We're going back to this, and this is gonna end up with you having to come up with kind of where you wanna go next with it. So, to start to recall, they came to us in September, the developers came to us in September to talk about this plaza. It is the block going from Trinity Place down to Broadway, and it's between 111 and 115 Broadway. So, and both of those buildings are landmark buildings. So if you recall, Victor will remind you if you didn't, and some of the changes that are proposed in here are ones that our landmark committee had asked for, and the landmark LPC has had them do, so that's kind of built into this. In September, I heard no real concerns about the actual design of it. And if you go on to the next, this is where it stands right now. The point in the process where we are is going to the Public Design Commission, the PDC. We're down to like the second, last 2 or 3 lines. They've already given unanimous preliminary approval with the understanding that the team, the applicants, will study the roadway grading transitions to minimize the potential tripping hazards and to improve accessible circulation, particularly near the security infrastructure and catch basins. So the only thing they're really focused on right now at this phase is accessibility. Getting rid of tripping hazards, making sure people can go between levels, and keep in mind, it is a 1-story rise as you go from Trinity Place to Broadway. It's that dramatic a difference in height or elevation. So they're dealing with a lot of different factors, and currently the store openings have a step to get into them. So these are the kinds of accessibility things the PDC is waiting to get some resolution about. Now that's enough. So again, to remind you, the 10th Street is only 30 feet wide, because there were a lot of questions here about emergency vehicles. If you recall, there were people last time said, okay, I understand why not bollards, because they need to have access to be able to get the emergency vehicles, fire trucks and police in. And this kind of gate makes more sense, because there will be a key where the fire and police will be able to open it, give themselves access, which the bollards wouldn't allow. To let people know, this happens to be from Open Street. Nevertheless, it's the same DOT. It's 15 feet is acquired emergency distance width that is needed. So on 10th Street Plaza, it would be half of the distance from building to building. It's only 30 feet, 15 of it has to be emergency access. So I can get that information. Update, because I did learn some information from the team and others since September discussion. Again, do you agree that there were no real problems with the design itself? Is that other people's recollection?
No,
Yes.
I think the issue was whether we should close the street also, that
No,
was.
that was done in 2018. That's a done deal, so that's not a discussion point.
But when we discussed it, I remember that was coming up, that whether or not it should be closed. And then also that we suspected or we want to make sure that the group advocating for this isn't using this for an open street, so they can privatize the space.
Which is another issue, because the PDC doesn't really care about that.
Yeah, but
That's a DOT issue, and we're gonna get to more about some of those details. The applicants have provided information about the sidewalks and streets will be flush with each other. So in fact, they're bringing up the street bed so it's the same height as the sidewalk. So you'll be able to go smoothly from one location to the other. Remember, accessibility is what the PDC cares about at this time. Also, there will be less than 1/4 inch vertical height difference within either of those surfaces. So the stones to the grout, to the sidewalk, there won't be more than 1/4 inch variation, which meets what the Access Board and the ADA mandate. So again, I was asked, I said, there's no real problem. However, DOT has advised Capital Properties to submit its design to the public design, so it is moving forward. If it's scheduled for this month, the postings aren't up on the PDC site. They say they post them the week before. It's the 3rd week of the month. They're having this month's meeting. For those who are interested, look on the site next week and you can see if they're scheduled or not for this month. The DOT rules for plazas regarding open dining in New York City are not yet complete. So we don't know how much of the space is going to be available or how much has to be preserved, not for open dining, but for public use only. So we can't really opine on that at this point because we have no rules that we can point to. So the DOT is saying, so you can't opine on something that none of us know the answer to. So next, wait, there's a little bit more information. The DOT Plaza program, because that does exist, historically, Plaza partners have been able to enter into a plaza agreement with the DOT, of course, to maintain the plazas and go through the process of becoming sub-concessionaires. So keep in mind, this is already a standing agreement. The partners that have come to us, they're responsible for paying for not only fixing it, but for maintaining it afterwards. That's partly why there's the agreement with the DOT. The DOT plans to return to this model, so this is the existing structure you should be considering. Plaza partners may enter into a concession agreement that gives them opportunities to generate revenue from their sub-concessions. However, the limited sponsorships and commercial events, they can raise some money from them, but all of the revenue has to go back into maintaining, managing, and operating the plaza, which is why they look so much nicer than other ones. But if the community has issues with the plaza that's been built, this is again DOT rule, you can see it on their website, which is given at the bottom. The DOT works closely with area residents, business owners, elected officials, and community boards to define the issues and make changes to make the project work better. So it's not, there's no outlet later as well. That's built into the plaza program rules, which are different from open streets, which are different from closed street, which are different from all the other programs. So some unaddressed CB1 concerns, which touch upon some what Eric was just talking about. The first floor commercial spaces along the plaza in 111 and 115, both buildings, are rented to restaurants. And how they would affect the public space in the plaza, we don't know the answer to that. What concessions might the owners have or allow in that space? Will the DOT's plaza rules for outdoor dining protect public space and how much? I've kind of told it's certainly a percent of it is going to be, but that's unknown what it is. And so our goals are to prevent it from becoming another Stone Street, which keep in mind, although that was said, that's a fully closed open street, which operates under different rules than plaza rules. Also, they wanted to protect the neighbors from noise and crowds, but these buildings have commercial tenants. They are not residents. They're not residential units in these two.
There is a residential building there.
Okay, well, according to their website, it's commercial, but take your word for it. Fine. I just told what their website said. So the question is, and the discussion is gonna be, so what do we do at this point? Knowing the limitations of the DOT plan isn't known yet for plazas. The design commission only really cares about accessibility, and that's the issue coming up this month. And when they come up this month, discussion's still valuable. We can't have a resolution because the meeting would be prior to full board meeting to be able to vote on any resolutions anyway. So those are all issues you have to keep in mind. Yeah, please.
So there's that one, the big gate. Is there one on each side?
I mean, guess what, it sort of looks like it from this drawing.
Okay, because from the one that we were just looking at, and I'm assuming, I'm making a huge assumption here, that if there's a gate for emergency vehicles, then the middle of the space would need to be cleared, whereas like this picture has all those tables there.
They're
Is
all
that-
movable tables.
So everybody was just like abandoned, like part like
Just as
the
they could
Red
on an
Sea.
open street or anywhere else.
Okay, if there was an
The
emergency.
advantage of it is if it's on your street or my street, since they're residential, there will be parking that you can't clear out of the way.
But
This
that-
would be completely clear, so the tables would have plenty of places to move.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to mention parking because parking is limited for the corners so that emergency vehicles can still come through.
Well, not on my block, but nevertheless, this is 30 feet, 15 feet are needed. And yes, someone would have to move the tables. I think they're probably capable of getting that done.
Okay.
Versus, none of us want to have nothing. Am I true? Is that true? You just want an empty 15 feet?
I mean, that's
I
how
mean,
streets
I
usually
imagine
look.
those tables are gonna be moved every day and night because I
Yeah.
believe what they said was like deliveries are still happening on the street in the mornings.
Mhm.
So like, this is not just gonna be like well, tables and chairs.
So delivery vehicles would also have a key to this gate?
I believe so, and I feel like I might have
they
seen
are
that
too.
already to deliver to these commercial spaces.
Interesting.
But somebody can correct me.
Yeah, clarity on that would be, just, I don't know.
No, they said that they would have access to it, because again, there are entryways into the buildings, kind of mid-block. And that's where the step comes up, and that's another thing that the partners are still working on, is how to get that flush with the sidewalk, especially with the rise and elevations going on. But that is going to be done, and it's gonna have to be done before they go to the PDC. But PDC is gonna ask about it otherwise, but those are main entries to get into the building. It's not as if every commercial space has its own door to the outside.
So Betty, the street is used. I was there 2 weeks ago. You have vehicles using it as a delivery, as a place to actually stop to make deliveries or pick up things.
True,
What-
and is this plaza in place?
Second?
Is this plaza design in place?
No, this one. I mean, I don't understand. I didn't understand.
She said, is this plaza in place,
It's
meaning
still the old road.
it's not a
that
plaza
you-
yet?
No,
it's
I
not.
understand. That's why I'm saying it's used. It serves a purpose, because you can't stop on Broadway with the
No,
bus lane.
actually, it was mandated that there be a traffic study, and there were 2 traffic studies looked at. It showed very light use, and the DOT has already approved. And CV1's already signed off on it being
Well,
closed,
but that was done like 3 years ago, right?
2018.
No, 5 years ago. That's 5 years ago. Things change. Okay.
You know, it's a done deal. I mean, that's a done deal.
Okay, so then the other thing is, if you're gonna have this partners, if they're gonna have access to it, they're gonna maintain it, they're gonna control who accesses it. It won't be available to people unless you can make a deal with them, or you're a tenant. So it's really gonna be closed off.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Like, control the gate to open and close. Remember,
The only people that won't be able to get through that gate are like vehicles and things. I can go there right now.
no, I'm saying with their plan, with this plan.
I would still be able to go there right now.
No, to walk, but if you had a vehicle.
Yeah.
that's.
That's the point.
But then only they would have it. Whoever owns the property adjacent would be able to control it. So it's like privatization.
Kate, do you want to elucidate the plaza program?
So it would be emergency vehicles would have access, and I believe for the deliveries on the block as well. But other private vehicle traffic would would not be permitted.
But then that they see fit, that the partners who would be maintaining it, right? They only if they see it fit that you can use it.
Kate, is that true at plazas? They can't choose other kinds of.
No, they wouldn't be allowed to allow other,
Like
like
their
to
own.
pick and choose. It would only be for the deliveries for those properties.
And emergency.
Emergency, yeah.
This is probably a silly question, but I mean, the gate, you know, just aesthetically, I mean, it's a gate. And like, not that bollards are better, but aren't there bollards that go down to the ground and come back up?
I understand
You're
the
supposed to take them
infrastructure issues why they couldn't do that.
Yeah, they said they looked at that
Oh,
last time
Yeah,
and that they
they said they
can't
can't do
use
that.
that for a specific reason.
okay.
And there'll be somebody 24/7 monitoring the gate, any emergency vehicles or anything?
No,
No,
there's a
and
gate, they have a deal with the, emergency, especially fire department and police, that there's a key that's gonna be there that they have access to.
Oh, so they'll be, okay.
So
They'll be
they
able
can
to
open
access
it
it
at
on
any
demand.
time.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, no, that was already worked out.
Well, one last question. I think we talked about this last time, but just so I understand, with plaza versus open streets, like as far as this becoming just a big like restaurant space versus like having the, you know, the public space.
Right.
It's not gonna be like just some outdoor club, you know, whereby like, I guess it's Stone Street, right?
I think that's our fear,
Is
honestly.
that's like, I think that's my.
But they don't have a decision on it yet, so we can't
Stone
find
Street's
out.
an open street.
It is.
Right,
Oh,
but
but hang on a second. Betty, there's absolutely no reason why we don't opine. It's going to PDC. PDC is the Public Design Commission. Regardless of if DOT has rules set or not, if you're talking about the design of the street, what was showed to the community is completely different than what the potential is. And especially because it's a landmark street.
right now, we're just answering people's questions, Cody.
I'm sorry, you were saying?
No, I was just asking, I mean, what are the guarantees that it would become like a you know, just a big club?
So-
You know, not-
Like a potty street.
So,
I'm agreeing with you, like a potty street.
Like, because, you know, because you want an equal balance of like public space, just that anybody can bring their box lunch over and have lunch, you know.
Let her explain the rules.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So before the temporary outdoor dining program that was created during the pandemic, DOT would allow plaza partners to enter into a maintenance agreement. And then after they have a maintenance agreement, they're able to enter into a sub-concession agreement to have exclusive seating on the pedestrian plaza. And in the past, DOT has required a percentage of that space to remain public. With the new permanent outdoor dining program and the proposed rules, we are internally evaluating what our plaza regulations for exclusive seating are going to be. We still expect to have maintenance partners in the future to be able to apply for sub-concessionaires rather, to apply for exclusive seating. And we would also take the community board's concerns into account when we receive those applications.
Cool. That answers my question.
So that's important. Thank you.
Are there any other questions in the room? Are there any hands up?
Yes.
Yes, would you want to call them on?
Justine?
There you go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was muted. I had to turn myself off and I just had to figure out how to do it. But I did. Thank you so much. And I guess my biggest question to begin with is, well, first I want to reiterate what Tammy said. I do believe we can put something in a resolution, putting parameters on the use of the street, because if this is going to be a public space and it's going to be open street for public pedestrian streetscape, it needs to be open to the public. And if it becomes taken over by businesses that come in, because I do have a question in here, but if the businesses come in and have partnerships and then sub-partnerships, as just was explained, it will not be a public space. It will be a business space that people can walk through, and albeit it will be a nicer public space or business space to walk through than it is right now, because it's pretty hideous right now. I'm not opposed to it being a pedestrian plaza. I am opposed to it becoming a open streets for restaurants or open streets for concession stands on a regular basis. And I believe, this is my question, the stores that were lining that, I believe on the left side, there used to be like a either a shoe repair shop, a pizza place. Are they all gone right now? Okay, so now they're empty, and now it's going to be open to the highest bidder, because that's, you know, life that is. And once again, the highest bidder is going to be looking at this and saying, "Oh, I'm going to commoditize space that I don't have to pay for." I have an issue with that. So I would strongly encourage a resolution that has limitations, at least coming from our mouths. Whether they listen to them or not remains to be seen, but we at least have to ask for it and be very clear that public space means public space. It means free access for people to sit, bring their box lunch, as somebody said earlier, and have the space available to them. And that's my 2 cents. And anything less than that, I would object to, not because I mind the public plaza, but I want it to be a public plaza. Thank you so much.
I think the problem here is that there's no one to make that ask of. This is before the Public Design Commission right now, so the only
Well, that's
issue
what you suggest.
But that's when they're going to be designing it. And number one is we put it in the resolution and it gets designed.
Different. The design is different from whether or not they ultimately, what the rules will ultimately be and whether they will ultimately enter into sub-agreements to make the space open for open dining.
The design will control, sorry, Tammy, but I know what you're going to say, because we do this in Battery Park City all the time. The design will control the use. And the parameters that you put on the design now will set forth the parameters of the use. It doesn't mean that we're going to say if a restaurant opens up, they can't possibly have something that goes on outside. It doesn't mean that, but what it does mean is we're saying we don't want the privatization of public space. This is like arcades. When we fought the arcades, or some of us fought the arcades and said, that was public space. Now they're going to take it, make money off of it, and at least with the arcades, they pay tax on it. This is not, they're not even paying tax on the space that they'd be taking up. And that's infuriating.
So,
There's no public money coming out of this. Maybe there'll be public dollars spent, I don't know, but we certainly have the ability and the power to set forth our expectations and requirements at the design phase. And that's the point. It doesn't mean we're not gonna have a chance to opine later, but I mean, again, not my committee, I know that, but I would be objecting to a resolution that doesn't include some design. Thank you.
The one with the fire hydrant. You're gonna buy it again. That one. Okay, keep in mind, this is what the design commission wants. They don't care about the use because they have no jurisdiction over that. The design they care about is accessibility. They don't care about the other aspects of the design. So when you say the design is gonna dictate what happens on that, that's not true in this particular case. What they're looking at would not affect restaurants using or not using and what percent they use of the space. So the issue here isn't to get into an argument, it's be very specific about who are you asking and what are you asking of them? Because if you're completely going in a different direction from what that agency cares about, really why? Is the timing correct?
I think you will, go ahead, Tammy, I know you're gonna pick up where I left off.
You can't actually even install a sign on a landmark area or on city property, you know, without having approval from them, right?
They have it already, yeah.
They have, and no, what they have is a preliminary approval that we gave them, right? This is our final review and our final comment. And why DOT is pushing them to go forward when it's not due for another 2 years is sort of irritating, because you're asking us something when we should actually have the full picture. Yes, you don't have the rules yet for pedestrian plazas, but we have, and PDC has already opined on gates. PDC has applied on the paving. I don't know if they've opined yet on the step-ins on the one half of the building because all of those retail had step-ins. You even mentioned it yourself. But because they review everything, and in our initial approval, we talked about the importance that it does not turn into a mall.
Some of Justine's concerns in whatever we're gonna
Mitch,
put.
let me finish, please. We put in that we wanted not for it to look like a mall. If you have 5 outdoor dining restaurants out there, it becomes a mall.
But Tammy, again, we're opining on the design. The design doesn't
The
look like a mall.
design, and we opine on, we wanted free public seating, not that makes it crowded. All of that has to do with design, and we should comment here. This should be part of the comment because it is design. Yes. And we want to know about design, and we want to ensure that whatever pop-ups that are allowed by DOT do not take away from the design of the buildings and the historic landmark.
I mean, we
All
can
of
put
that
in
should be in there.
That's not, we can do that, but there's no one.
Of course
to
we
make that
can.
happen. We were, when you and Betty asked the DOT specifically whether or not they would ask them to foreclose the possibility of even entering these agreements in the future, they said they would not require the operator to do that. So there.
All we asked was to wait until the rules came out under open dining for pedestrian plazas, so we would know 100% what all of the parameters are.
Right, but they're not doing that.
They're not doing that. So then we still should be commenting on our concerns in terms of design, access and flow on everything. Because quite frankly, we don't know if we will get another bite at this apple. And if you say nothing, then nothing's out there. Saying nothing is ignoring the ruling that we made in 2018. And that, I think, is unwise in terms of process for a community board.
I have no problem mentioning the concerns like as whereas statements. What I'm concerned about is trying to.
What are you asking?
Right, my concern is trying to, A, make requests that are going to nobody and that nobody has the power or mechanism to do anything about. Or B, is to try and leverage this design process in order to get what we want, to try and hold this up through the design process just in order to get things that we want.
Jess, DOT is part and parcel to the partnership agency here. This is a time that we should start to put this in. We need to support the resolution if we agree with it from 2018, which gave our preliminary approvals. And we should add any of the concerns that we have as whereases in there.
That's fine. If there are whereases, that's fine. But I don't want to write a resolution that says that we're not.
But it's not about you. It should be consensus of the committee, right? I hear what you're saying. I hear what Betty's saying. I hear what Mitch is saying. I want to hear what Cody says, what Mimi says. It's not about you or me or Betty. It's about consensus of the committee.
The last time we were here, everyone said that they were fine with the design, but they had concerns that simply cannot be addressed at this point legally, based on what we've heard from the DOT, unless we try and just delay it or obstruct it in order to get what we want, which I just don't think is appropriate or a good idea. But that's me opening it up.
Based on what I'm hearing tonight from I find no harm in putting some of Justine's concerns, which she said before, as is whatever, whereas or whatever. I find that no harm, no foul. If nobody does anything, fine, but there's no harm in doing that.
Rich, that's very nice, but now answer my question.
I'm sorry?
Which was to everybody, not specifically to you. Give me a therefore be it resolved statement that will include who you're asking and what exactly you're asking for.
Is it required?
I can, well, that's what that's the only part that is the resolution. The whereases I can change all over the place, their background. Therefore be it resolved, that is the resolution. And all therefore be it resolved as well. Good.
What about a resolution that therefore be it resolved that we support the design, and then we just have in the whereases these XYZ concerns were expressed?
I would say, why can't you do approval with conditions?
Yep.
Approval of what?
as we normally would have done if it was a land use action, because in this case, where there's design proposals have overlapping jurisdiction, the sponsoring agency is responsible for coordinating the project, which is DOT. So this is a good time, especially since they don't have their rules, to make our concerns known for both.
Who are you asking for what?
DOT, we're asking for them to consider our request that this is a public plaza that is maintained for public use, free access, and does not become a mall. I mean, I think that's a very fair thing. Now, the whereases could explain that in more depth. I know I'm not writing the resolution, so I'm not on this committee, but I think it's really pretty simple. We're saying what we don't want. So as Tammy said, we approve it. Of course, we're approving a plaza, a pedestrian plaza there. The pictures that they put forth, even with a gate, no gate, I don't care. That is a lovely use of that space. We agree with that. What we don't want to see is privatization of the public land. And then that's a therefore be it resolved. CB1 states that we don't want to see privatization of public land. Through, that's it, simple. And who's that to? Whoever the heck it is to, DOT. Because DOT is going to be giving the contract out to them.
Is there a way to say that as a blend between public, restaurant space and public space, 50%, or whatever? I mean, I don't know how that works, but
whatever this committee decides, sure. Put in what you guys decide.
I'm just concerned about writing a resolution that is gobbledygook, because we are now talking about several different agencies, several different processes. There's approval of this, there's the rulemaking. If we want to do a resolution separately on the rulemaking and about it, that their upcoming rules about plaza should have a 50-50 requirement, we can do that. But putting that in here is just.
This is jurisdiction for both agencies. PDC is really clear when it comes over this, right? It's a formal submission to PDC. But let's just use an example. If you wanted to install a work of art in a city park, the application has to come from the Parks Department, right? In this case, the application is coming from DOT. So it is perfectly relevant to have our comments for DOT in with our responses for PDC.
Okay,
Just sending it to both agencies, Jess. I mean, it's a record of our thoughts and our process.
If you received such a resolution like that, requesting in this resolution
Well,
that,
she can't speak to that.
what would the response be? Like, well, not what would the response be, but what would you be able to even do about that at this point?
You just not want to do anything. You don't want to ask for anything just because maybe.
No, I mean, I want to opine on at the process that we're being asked to opine on, which is the design. Like, we're an advisory committee, guys. We're not the legislature or the commission of the DOT. We don't get to redesign this, we have a role and we're trying to jam a million different things into it.
And I think my concern is we do have a role, and why wouldn't we fully use the role that we have to opine?
We can't.
Agreed, 100%.
I know.
Again, I would vote for a resolution that approved of this, and you can put in the whereas all these concerns, which are fine concerns. But yes.
So it sounds like it's really getting down to, therefore be it resolved that CB1 reaffirms the use of this space, I'll put down the address of it, to be used as a public plaza. And everything else goes in the whereases.
Does that make people happy?
I would hope it would be with the following conditions, not as whereas, conditions, much like we did in 2018. It was that you're looking at it, it's further along now, and putting in the conditions that people are asking.
Could we do something like, we approve of this design with the condition that PDC or DOC, I don't know at this point, comes back to us when they have the ruling on how plazas can be used, so that we can then provide a resolution for how we think that this space should be used?
That was suggested by Ed Pingar.
Yeah, I think my understanding is that's gonna happen anyway, right? Like
Yes, it is.
after, yeah.
DOT, we can,
Not
oh, should I not?
No, please do, Kate. I'm curious to hear how the rulemaking works with the 30-day approval and the discussions we're having here, and then the open dining process, because
It's not open dining.
Right, but,
be
open
It
dining.
likely will be.
So open dining is a separate program from plazas, but during the pandemic, open restaurants were allowed to operate on plazas. So we are now in the proposal period for the permanent outdoor dining program. And we are waiting to finalize those rules following the public comment period, but those rules will also affect how we operate
The classes.
exclusive seating on plazas. Before COVID, we allowed, again, the maintenance partners to be able to enter into a concession agreement. And I think that we will be able to, once we have finalized information on how the plazas will be affected by the new outdoor dining program, we would share that with Community Board 1. But as of now, we do not have that.
Right, so correct me if I'm wrong, that if we if we put in the resolution that we would like there to be restrictions, 50% of it can be open dining, you would be able to do nothing with that because that is generally determined by the rules, which don't exist yet, right? And you can't put in some sort of covenant into their lease to require that, right?
Right, we would not ask the maintenance partner to forego the outdoor or to forego exclusive seating. Because it wouldn't be outdoor dining, it would be exclusive seating under the plaza program.
Is it also fair to say that all plazas have to be treated the same by the DOT, same rules? You're not gonna pick out, well, this plaza has different rules than this plaza does.
Yes, but it's my understanding that we do take into consideration concerns from the community boards when we're evaluating individual agreements.
So when would it be best to hear from us on that then? Would it be at this phase or once?
Comment period.
It would not be at this phase. I'm not sure when we would have the final determination on the plaza rules. But it would something we would have to keep the community board updated on.
Jesse, it might not help now, but what harm would it do to put in some of Justine's language? It might be for nothing, but what harm would it do?
That's fine.
So, because.
Especially I'm sorry, but especially because Kate just said that the decisions are made when they're made, but there's no guarantee as to when that will happen. And there's going to be nothing in contracts limiting any space and requiring private space to be held. I'm sorry, public space to be held. So I think the more frequently and the louder and clearer we state that public space should remain public space, the better it is. So the DOT and all the agencies understand that they do not have the public's okay with the privatization of public space.
Okay. Anyone else?
That's a personal opinion, I mean,
Well, it's all personal. things.
The only one that raised my hand that seems futile.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with Jesse. I think what's in front of us now is just a design, and if we need to weigh in to say that we agree with an accessible design, and we agree with those parameters. It sounds very clear from Kate, they're at the early stages of determining the rules for exclusive seating in a plaza. And I think it would be better just to have that be its own resolution at a future time. Like, we have plenty of time for that. Yeah.
I've learned the long and hard way that we never have plenty of time. And times are missed, and it doesn't hurt to make your points known. But again, it's your committee. Thank you.
Pat?
I want to jump in because, first of all, you all know that I totally disagree with this plaza, which obviously is neither here nor there just because I live here. But anyway, there's New City Park a block away, which is open to the public where everyone goes in the summer and the nice months to sit and eat their lunch. So this plaza is going to become a perfect setting for private businesses to have their restaurants there and make it, totally exclusive to the people who are going to their establishments. Why do they need to have an open plaza a block away from a perfectly huge park that everybody goes to sit in the summer and eat their lunch? I'm not understanding it, but that's all I have to say.
I think all our streets should be pedestrian plazas. Yes, Brian?
So I think really what we're trying to get at is.
Unless you lived through 9/11 and you know what it's like to have all the streets closed around you where you can't get access.
Yep.
I was here on that one. Go ahead.
What I'm hearing is that really what we're trying to get to is that we want them to come back to us so that we can give a formal resolution. We are in agreement that this, like, accessibility stuff and design is good. But I think what we're really trying to say is, but don't just leave us out of the rest of it. So how can we do that in a strong way and it not just be for like the background language? I think that's the condition I feel like we're trying to get at.
Wouldn't that be using some of Justine's language?
We can use that language, but I mean,
Well,
I'm
that's
trying
not
to
idea.
boil it down because now we're talking about this for like everyone.
That's about use, and he's sort of saying, okay, this is about design, but we want to keep weighing in.
So I'm asking the two leaders, how can we do that?
So what if we did that we support the design?
Well, I was gonna say first, can we get how many people wanted? Commenting about the design is one thing. Who wants to opine on absolutely everything?
That's too open-ended. Who wants to opine on the use
that have been
At this
discussed
time,
at this time?
which is.
Right, at this time, but there's no question
Yeah.
we're opine
I
during
mean, we
the
all
comment
want,
period.
yeah, I would want
Once the
to.
plaza rule.
I feel it's no harm, it might not do any good, but there's no harm in using some of that language, so I'm for opining on that, whether it does any good or not.
Okay, dictate the wording.
But that was only two hands that went up.
I was gonna say, but nobody, well, dictate the wording. The point is, people are saying, oh, yeah, let's just do it. Show me the word.
No, I was deferring to Justine's wording, okay? I was agreeing with her point, and so I was.
I'm voting because
And
I'm
Tammy.
here, and I am gonna say that I vote that we say yes, because we've already been on record as saying yes, with restrictions, and the restrictions are listed in there. And we can,
Resolution you're talking about?
I'm talking about a positive resolution that lists all the restrictions and all the concerns, simply because there's no rules yet. And if you say nothing, you've said nothing. And then if 3 years goes by and all of a sudden you have 15 feet of clear path and full private seating from open dining for the entire rest of the street, saying I told you so is not helpful.
That's right.
Okay, so
That's
how
right.
about, can we refer back to our older resolution? Make this simpler?
Does it have those same spheres in it?
If there weren't open restaurants, then how would it have the same
But
thing?
that's part of the issue.
Yeah, that's the point. Like, so
Well,
why
I
would we
just
just
like
refer
to
back to
say
the?
that it didn't want,
Tammy, when you said it's in there and refer back to, what are you referring?
We said conceptually yes in landmarks. We said with the changes were made. We said conceptually yes, pending final design, as long as it didn't turn into a mall. That what we liked was free public seating. And we liked having open access. I think it's fair to comment on that because there was no open dining. So the initial approval of the community board was that it would be an open street where you could see from the bottom to the top without obstruction. And there was some public seating, period. That there were not structures on the street or attached to the building and the sidewalks, as in sidewalk cafe and open dining.
Could I ask a question about process? Like, is the Public Design Commission asking do we have to weigh in? Are they looking for a resolution from us?
You never have to weigh in, but if you're gonna be more specific, what are they interested in? I showed you on the written stuff. And it had to do with accessibility and movement.
Right, no trip hazards,
Right.
making sure, right, the incline is proper.
And we all support that.
But and that's their purview. And some bit with the aesthetics.
See, Tammy's saying it's broader than that, because the uses to her are part of design.
Yeah.
And that's where the discrepancy comes in, because I don't agree that use and the rules, which are really DOT's purview, are part of the design. Because
Yeah,
these are movable chairs and tables.
that was really my thing, is that, like, the
Yeah.
things that we're asking for are really the DOT's purview, and this is not.
It really seems like the design is just gonna be like sort of the color of the stone or the exact materials, because it's really just gonna be, and maybe some markings or paintings, like, it's mostly gonna be just a flat surface with like removable stuff.
You know, Jesse, but both
You
artists
can't
plaza,
put
but
up
what's-
paintings. You can't actually
So
put
on
up
the
paintings.
pavement, a lot of, I've seen a lot of plazas where the surface is decorated.
That reminds me, by West Broadway and Chambers, there are like designs that make it during the warm weather, groups of people late at night, hanging out, skateboarding, smoking weed in front of the bit, like at all hours. There's no enforcement, but because of the design, it's accessible for people. It makes it easier for people to sit and hang out. So, I mean, like, I could see the relationship.
No, yeah, but.
We want people to sit and hang out.
No, but
That's what we.
what I was saying that, yeah, but not, if the way the design is over there, there are people sitting something at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't live in that building, but I feel for the people that live in the building that's right in front of me.
You're saying that the use and the design, they interact, yeah, but here with like, what is a design that prevents open dining? Are we gonna put like spikes? Like, I don't know.
No, I don't know.
So like, it's just, we have a design and we're being asked, do we approve it?
Okay,
So,
let me tell you where I am right now.
but point taken that, because it doesn't hurt to put in your design.
CD1 approves, CD1
I'm checking
reaffirms
this.
our,
Doesn't hurt.
hey,
I apologize.
CD1 reaffirms our 2018 resolution, which will link that one in, for 10th Street pedestrian plaza. As long as then one, road sidewalk and building entries are flush with each other. That's partly design. And they're still being worked on, so the condition could be valid there. That there is free public seating, that allows public circulation, which again is part of the public design cared about. That was accessibility as well to them. What else was raised? And does anyone have any problems with that so far? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it should remain functional for transportation. I don't agree that it should be turned into a public plaza, but I see I'm in the minority. I think we lost. Yeah, I've lost that.
We missed our
Yeah,
chance on that one.
It is a clause. That's why I said
I'll
it's
get you down as a no.
Yeah, it's reaffirming.
Hard no.
Yeah, no, it's reaffirming 2018 where they gave that. as the one. So, that's why I said that rather than saying that we approve this, I'm saying that we are reaffirm the 2018, which comes with its own conditions, which makes this a little bit softer in some ways. For the 10th Street pedestrian plaza. And now I've given you 3 different things.
Betty, I would want to see something in there that talks about that CB1 approved, public seating and maintaining the original design and appropriateness that did not have obstructions such as open dining. Because now you have the design things that are out there for open dining, the comment period that are there. Which would then block view corridors, circulation and access, and impact the amount of possible public seating. free public
So
seating.
you're talking about in the future, there is no blocking of viewpoint, because I can tell you, I went back and looked at the original drawings from the same team. And they're exactly the same in 2017 that they were in 2023. So there's been no change over time.
Yeah, she's saying in the future because the idea is that because we're waiting for DOT to figure out open dining for plazas, that it does not obstruct. So it would be in the future because that didn't exist back in 2017, 2018. And they're not going to put, an outdoor shed in this picture because that'd be ugly.
Correct, but PDC does opine on the, unique history, the context of the site. It's super important that the street, has a higher elevation at one end to the other. So the view corridors and adding, structures attached to the building or freestanding will affect the view corridors. I think that's important.
Well, that's not changed.
But the plazas I've seen, that are all created all up and down along Broadway, Madison Square Park and Herald Square, there's nothing attached to the buildings. It's just the surface that gets changed and maybe
Detta, I would rather have it be in here because PDC talks about, again, they have a range of design parameters, which includes its unique history, the context of the site and the surrounding area, the materiality of what's used, maintainability of the design, appropriateness, and how everything best serves the public. We talked about
Can I just
serving
ask
the
a
public.
Can we affirm our us being CB1 resolutions from 2017 and 2018, and that'll pick up the landmarks one, which has its own conditions, which are pretty much met in these diagrams. Nevertheless, none of it is built yet. But so we could reaffirm and that committee has already done it and has a lot more expertise than we do. So those things would still be standing and would be included with this resolution anyway. Right, we don't need to reiterate what they've already done and put a lot of time into.
I just want to, for the wording for the plaza, do you call it open dining or do you call it exclusive seating?
For plaza, it's exclusive
So we
seating.
just want to make sure that that's the wording, if we use wording, so it doesn't get confused.
Exclusive.
And I would specifically say, because exclusive seating does not best serve the public.
I just have a question. Again, with the exclusive seating, in a situation like this, a plaza with a certain square footage of real estate, does this get allocated? I mean, in these new rules that are being, developed, would a certain percentage, feasibly could a certain percentage be allocated for exclusive seating and a certain percentage for public?
Yes, that's how we've previously operated. We're evaluating internally what that percentage will be going forward.
And there would be no sheds?
No.
Or structure?
There would not be structures.
Okay.
Now, this design is what's being told.
Wait a minute, Kate.
Yes?
Are you 100% sure there would be no sheds allowed in the roadbed over here? Because we're not demapping the street, even though it's a pedestrian plaza. Are you 100% sure that that is not a possibility?
They're not allowed.
I will say, as far as I understand, that they would not be allowed. I will not say that I'm 100% sure, but as far as I understand, they would not be allowed.
Because
Sheds
the
aren't
rules,
allowed on other streets.
but the rules have not been set yet.
So so the new outdoor dining rules we would not be using those for a pedestrian plaza once they are finalized. The pedestrian plazas would have their own rules for exclusive seating, that if the restaurants are a sub-concessionaire, then through the maintenance agreement with the plaza partner, then they would be able to have seating for their patrons there. But it is not the same thing as the new proposed outdoor dining rules.
And there's probably not space for a shed anyway, if you have to have the 15 feet.
Yeah.
So that's not happening. I don't even know why we're freaking out about it.
I think the main point is that we don't want we keep pushing that we don't want this to become private space for whatever is there. So shed, no, but I think to your point, we will in the future need to discuss what percentage or help to impact what percentage is exclusive dining.
Right.
Which there's no question we'll do once the plaza rules have a comment period, and we know what they are, and we have a comment period. Yeah, I certainly agree with that.
And we would share an update with CD1 on once we have that information.
And that's why at this point, if it's reaffirming 2016, I think it's 2016 and 2018, the two existing resolutions on this particular.
But Betty, if we say nothing,
Would you let me finish, please?
you have to say something.
We are saying something.
I am saying something, I just didn't get to finish the sentence. So reaffirming the resolutions for the 10th Street Plaza, as long as the road, sidewalk, and thresholds are all level or flush, as long as there's free public seating, as long as it allows free public circulation, as long as the view corridors remain open. Did I miss anything really obvious?
I have a question.
That's obvious.
It's not different.
Well, wait, finish
It's
this.
about process. So with this maintenance agreement with the partners, how long would this arrangement be? And my understanding from hearing this is they don't pay the city any money for this control of this, but they agree to maintain it. Now,
And build it.
And build it.
pay for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if there's exclusive dining, then where would the public sit who aren't customers?
Because it would only be part.
So again, that would be the question of what the percentage of exclusive versus public would be.
Like I said, it might be a moot point, but I think that's why Justine and Tammy want to put something in there. I'm not gonna say what it is, but they want to put something in there. Just, it's no harm right now to do that.
But Mitch, didn't I just do that?
Oh, no, I didn't say you didn't. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, no, I understand, the stake down, but as far as
Yeah.
arguing percent or whatever, there's no
Sure.
point.
Kate and Betty, do you know what under the current pedestrian rules, what the percentage of exclusive seating is versus
not.
public seating?
I don't have that handy.
Could that be Googled? Jess seems
don't-
pretty quick.
Thanks for that.
It's
I
just-
will.
Because the open dining doesn't exist or didn't exist, I don't think.
But no, that's not what she's
Relevant
asking. She's asking what the current rule is for the percentage of public space. I would have to check. I don't know that right now.
Kate,
I don't
you
know.
also said that the private partner that's maintaining the plaza, if they get some exclusive seating, the revenue they're generating from their concessions, they have to put back into maintenance of the plaza.
That's correct.
Which
So,
means
I
they'd buy
mean-
tables and chairs, right? Like, what would they do with that?
They put it back into that business, that's what they were doing. You know, that- and I wanna say you, I don't mean anybody in particular,
There could be
but
planters.
I thought you meant-
You're maintaining the
But
gate.
that's not in the
Cleanliness.
design.
Yeah.
Cleaning, maintenance, repairs, that sort of
Is
thing.
that the limitation of what they?
I'm
put
not
their-
sure. I would have to check.
Okay, cause
Yeah.
like, I'd like to know what, if there are any limitations as to what they could put their money in, if they're making profits off of the exclusive seating.
and that's why Justine wanted to have some language like about that.
Cause if they end up getting like more robust tables and chairs or what have you, like that would potentially get in the way of emergency vehicles and like go against the spirit of what we've been saying.
But they can't get in the way of emergency vehicles. Well, that's a mandated thing by the DOT.
Sure.
If you're gonna complain that there isn't,
But there's no
you can't
enforcement.
create 15 feet of clear path, you can get the DOT to act real fast.
Betty, do you mind doing one more reading of it, of what you have so far?
No, I don't. Excuse me, because it's really scribbled.
That's fine.
CB1 reaffirms our 2016 2016 or 2017, and 2018 resolutions for 10th Street pedestrian plaza, as long as, or you can put yes if you like that better, the road, sidewalk, and entries are flush, so there's accessibility, that there's no more than 1/4 inch variation across the surfaces, that there is free public seating, that it allows free public circulation, that is really available public circulation, and that the view corridors remain open.
I'm about to make it hot, but could we, to the point of what people are saying, put in something to say, and we get to, I don't know, opine, find better language on the amount of exclusive seating for the businesses there?
That's the DOT issue, and again, we
Versus PDC.
can't opine,
Okay.
that's a no,
And
that we can. We may or may not agree with it, but we can certainly opine like we can on the next 3 things we're gonna be dealing with.
Are we gonna, Betty, are we gonna ask for opening hours? Because as soon as you privatize it to a pedestrian plaza, they have the right to post hours. Are we saying anything or opining on any of that?
Well, leave that to a whereas, so if we can at least vote on this.
What would be in the whereas?
Yes. I just want to ask Kate one more question.
Yeah.
The percentage that we're talking about, the split, is determined by DOT rules, which again are still being drafted. There's no split that's ever included in private agreements. It's solely determined by DOT rules, right?
And as far as I understand, yes.
Okay, so then when that rule does come up for public comment, that is a good time for us to opine on that issue specifically.
And why wouldn't we put in here that we want it as a majority, non-exclusive seating? What's the downside?
We can't, I think there is a downside to all this, because I think that when you send like lists of grievances that are outside the context of what agencies are asking for, that have a ton of work, that they look past it. I think it's much more effective if we're really streamlined and we ask at the right time, as a general matter, but that's just me.
Or it's me too, it's logical.
City workers are busy.
Yeah.
So how often are these inspected by, to make sure that there is space for emergency vehicles?
I would have to check, I'm not certain.
And I can't find the current rule, but I will keep looking for that. On this one.
Keep in mind, I'm gonna guess that besides checking, one of the most effective ways is people reporting. Because that gets the agency to look at it and say, whoa.
Yeah, but who's gonna report? Like if they're sitting.
Well,
in
believe me, there are a lot of
pieces,
people, if there's solid chairs and seats and there's really no way you need to move them. Believe me, people are gonna say, DOT, come and take a look at this, because show me how you're gonna get 15 feet.
Who's going to say that? Like, the people that are coming here are not gonna know what the
You're
requirements
going to
are.
see some of that going on soon. So you're going to see some things announced where somebody asked for some changes to streets and they're happening.
Where it stands.
You ask, because I say all the time.
We might actually be close to a vote. I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be
Yes,
unanimous
it's
vote,
gonna be
but
unanimous.
I actually do have to leave like 5 minutes ago, but
I mean, we got some of the language in there.
Is that adequate to vote on? Because
Yes.
what we're voting on is just this, not the whereas.
Okay, understood. But I appreciate
Okay,
understanding how it's.
yeah.
then if we're ready for a vote, Inez, you want to take it into account, and I'll check to make sure there.
And let's say we vote to approve it, you still might add some whereases, correct?
yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so then,
whereas
good.
can change, remodify.
Okay, then I'm cool.
Okay. All in favor?
Sure.
Okay. Let me check my line. Are you voting, Tammy?
I'm abstaining until I see the full resolution. Because I'm looking through all of the plaza rules that currently exist for pedestrian plazas to see how they, if it was just under today's rules, how it would look.
Right, so we 9 votes.
Eric, how do you vote?
She has to ask for cancels and no's still.
Oh,
right.
and
But he's a hard
everybody
no.
voted. No, Eric just
Oh,
sat there.
Oh, my
No.
No, thank you.
Sorry.
He's an HM.
You can abstain your no.
No abstentions, right?
Well, Tammy
No,
abstained.
Tammy said you can be an abstention.
Oh, right.
Tammy abstained and then you had one.
Okay, good.
We'll try to learn more about these rules, because they are really complicated, these rules, so.
It really is.
We'll try to learn more.
Yeah, you had 8 yes, 1 abstention, 1 no.
I'm genuinely curious about how the real estate is to be, like, if you have a certain amount of space, how do you?
Alright, so that passes. What's next?
Depending on the next
Okay,
generation,
what
we
did you
can
say
change
goodbye to Jeff?
direction.
I thought we'd be done by now, but that
Open
was-
streets.
Why would you think
Depending on who the
that?
next mayor is.
Yeah, it's only 8.
Why would you think we'd be done by 8? We're
Not
literally
the real
never done
The
by
real
8.
estate, that particular public.
Now I know.
Well, I was gonna say, we
Yes,
have
you're
really
saying
open
that,
this one.
okay.
But I'm hoping for the next part, to move along too.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay, if I can see the screen, in front of me, turn around. Well, that's
Sure.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There's so much change.
Okay, so we're gonna be talking about 3 different rules.
I'm sorry, Betty?
We're gonna be talking about 3 different rules.
Yes.
You're gonna be able to look at the, these are where each of them are located. They're on New York City rules. You'll see parts of it, and I'll tell you how to comment. The reason we're doing this is on the first one, the comment period is over on November 15th, which means before, so none of these can have resolutions. So all of them, the public comment ends before full board this month. So this may matter of 1, individuals submitting comments, so you can all do whatever you want. This is more informational than leading to a decision of you voting on a resolution. And 2, so Tammy can also hear, so if they want to draft a letter from the chair, they have some information of what people are thinking about, okay? So let's go on, go to the next one. If you go onto New York City rules, you'll see a drop down like this, and there's the website for it. But these are the ones that are up for public hearings right now. And these are the 3, there's a longer list. These are the 3 we're gonna be talking about tonight, and they happen to appear just in order. But if you see the top one, it's hypertext. I pointed to it so it would turn to hypertext. So you can see this is how you get into getting more information about them. This is what it looks like. Put your mouse over it, you're gonna get hypertext, click on it, and next.
Oh, Nish, could you make it, okay, no, I'm gonna make the previous one a little bigger, but then you're on to the next one, no
What do
problem.
you mean by hypertext? You mean that you can link on it?
Yes.
Okay, you can click on the link. Hypertext is the whole thing. The whole thing's hypertext.
So did you see where it got underlined when you have your mouse? As soon as you do that, it's activated and it'll open up to everything about the rule, from commenting to the rule itself to everything. First one, we're gonna talk about prohibition of bending on elevated pedestrian walkways and bicycle lanes on a bridge or bridge approaches. And as you'll see, this was initially inspired by the Brooklyn Bridge, but move on.
You know, the Brooklyn Bridge is
It's right
protected
here.
bike lane, so the
No,
vendors
no,
can't
we're
go there,
talking
right?
about the Brooklyn Bridge, correct.
Okay,
And so most of it's gonna be the esplanade, the pedestrian walkway
Okay.
is where the vendors tend to go. The vending doesn't tend to be on the bike lane.
okay.
Just one. Okay, so when you go onto it, this is what you're going to see, and then underneath it, you can see the rule status, it's both proposed. It is the DOT that you're gonna be dealing with. So you're gonna see it's different depending on who the agency is. And if you want to get the full text rule, you can click and you can see the whole thing. Next. But to give you the short version of it, I'll give you some things from different publications that we're talking about it. For instance, Crane's New York Business. The DOT says these new rules are fueled by the increasing bridge foot traffic. On a typical fall weekend in 2022, there were an average of 34,000 pedestrians traversing it. That's double what it was the year before in 2021. But keep in in mind, in 2018, it was in fact on December 24th, remember this clipping? There were so many pedestrians on the Esplanade, the NYPD actually shut down the walkway and wouldn't allow anyone to enter. People could leave, but nobody could enter. And if you see pictures of it, people were standing shoulder to shoulder covering it. So it's not, although this increase is there, it's probably more due to COVID because in 2018, it was ridiculously congested.
But we don't have that number.
No, I don't think they were keeping the number, but if you want, I'll send you the article about it. The average width of the elevated pedestrian walkway is roughly 16 feet, but it does narrow to 5. Anyone who's been on it, you've seen those places. Throw vendors into the mix, and that can cause dangerous bottlenecks, says the city. This is DOT speaking. The ability of pedestrians to exit the bridge safely is jeopardized by vendors. And again, this is a quote, so it's who display the store, their wares, carts, tables, tents, tarps, canopies, coolers, and generators along the elevated pedestrian walkway. That's what we're talking about next.
Thank you.
As well as the access to it on the streets immediately leading to it. The proposed rules state, the officials also point to the bridge's high pedestrian traffic during protests as well as emergencies. Remember, there are times when people evacuate, such as 9/11, but also less dramatic than that, when people actually exit this area because the subways are closed or other reasons. So it's nice to have it available to be walked on. In Streets blog, they report on a couple of slightly different things. The slated changes will clarify the rules about vending and make it easier for the cops to act, who just covered it. Because the complex regulations currently only imply that selling is not allowed. So in fact, in the city's mind, in many ways, DOT, they're not really changing or creating something new. They're merely clarifying something that they thought was clear, but legally it wasn't clear enough. Police have already started doing sweeps of the bridge at the request of the mayor, starting at the beginning of this year. So keep in mind, that's another factor. Next. From CB1 perspective, I went through all kinds of districts. The Brooklyn Bridge, this is a testimony that was given in 2012 by the CB1 chair to City Council. And it was, the Brooklyn Bridge also provides a critical open space via walkway and bikeway. The narrow and crowded walkway connects commuters to Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn, and increasingly has become a major tourist destination. We can all agree with that. Vendors on and near the bridge compound the heavy congestion and contribute to sanitation problems. So already that was part of the testimony CB1 was concerned about back then, 11 years ago. In October of 22, it was actually, this issue was on the Quality of Life Committee. There were a lot of complaints about the vendors, the crowding, the sanitation. There was a 360 view cameras and people being hit in the head by those who went by. Some of the vendors were selling alcohol. These things were discussed, but no resolution was done. So I can't point you to anything with that. So what do people think? And again, this is just exchanging information because you can comment the way you want to comment. I hope you do comment. Yes, Cody.
I have just one thing to add. A lot of the vendors, I assume they sell bottles of water and other items. It's on the bike lane is like the aftermath of a frat boy house party. I mean, there's trash like everywhere. And it's like, especially plastic bottles, if they still have liquid in them, it's very hazardous for cyclists to hit a bottle, you know, that you don't see. And if you have like really skinny wheels, I mean, it can cause accidents. So, and people do dodge traffic, dodge, you know, debris, refuse and whatnot on the bike lane. And the bike lane is very narrow. So it presents a problem for a hazard. I assume it's coming from up, I mean, I can't think of where else it's coming from.
People can bring their own water. So I'm not gonna blame that on the vendors. It could be.
But there's
Especially
other,
those at the entry to the bridge, not actually on the Esplanade. because
True.
The cyclists would pass them.
but there is other debris as well, other trash or along the bike path. And some days are worse than others. You know, in the mornings, it's.
You think it's coming more from the vendors or equally from the pedestrians also?
It's probably coming from the pedestrians, I would say that, you know, but I'm not exactly sure what the vendors are selling.
Right.
Quite honestly, I haven't walked it since the bike lane opened, it's just too crowded.
Right.
So,
Just about everything, but certainly water.
and which, you know, no problem, you know, with water, but maybe there need to be more trash receptacles on the bridge, you know, I
Well,
don't know.
but let's stick with the rule.
Okay, I'm sorry, yes.
Eric,
I don't think, I'm hesitant on always creating new rules, new laws, new regs, when the real problem is they're not enforcing it. I mean, it's already known that you can't block a bike lane. I don't think we need to put it in a rule.
this isn't with the bike lane, this is really the Esplanade.
Or pedestrians.
That's where the sellers are.
Okay, and then the issue is, okay, I don't know, because I don't follow it, but when I see them, are they licensed? So that's the real issue. It's not that because if they're already breaking the law, I mean, the regulations, then this new one won't stop them, even with these new rules. It should be, we should enforce the existing ones we have, and that would clear out, I don't know, maybe 90% of the vendors, because they're not
Well, let
licensed.
me go back to the comment that I made before. The current rules imply, but do not explicitly state that you can't. So the DOT is trying to make it very clear and say, no vending.
But there was never vending on the bridge, let's say 6 years ago. I mean, maybe a few, but it wasn't on the bridge.
Yeah, no, it's exploding.
Yeah.
The more pedestrians there are, and the more
Right.
people selling on.
So the issue is enforcement of the existing rules. I don't think we need new ones, although I support the goal. I do.
But the existing rules are not adequate because they only imply, but they do not say you can't.
See, what I think, oh, I'm sorry, you go, Stan, no problem.
Yeah, yeah, it's similar to what Eric said, it is a problem in the city that there's no longer enforcement of vendors. So they're just, unlike, there's a lot of thoroughfares I go on where the amount of vendors has exploded. And because, you know, they used to have a license and they were checked periodically, but then that was taken from NYPD and given to Consumer Affairs and Worker Protection, who now threw it to sanitation. So it's sort of like, no one's really doing that. So, but given that they're not doing that, and I don't see enforcement of vendor licenses coming back, like maybe we do need this clarification that at least on bridges and elevated walkways and certain certain thoroughfares, like pedestrian and bike thoroughfares, you can't have vending. Like, because then maybe a different unit can step in, because it wouldn't be the vendor enforcement, it would be sort of like enforcement against a certain place. But I mean, yeah, 20 years ago, there was nobody on the Brooklyn Bridge vending. And
Well,
it's just,
certainly in 2012, it was a problem, you know.
yeah, no, it started, and then I just noticed since the pandemic started, and since it got taken away from the police and sort of transferred to these other agencies, just an explosion of vendors, a lot of places.
Right, which makes them want to clean up their rules, but let me call on Tammy, whose hands up, and then Mitch, you go.
What I always don't like is when it's either all or nothing. Because, you know, like I said, there's definitely, it's definitely gone out of control. But then to penalize, take it 100%, I don't find that, I mean, you know, there are people that, you know, they need a bottle of water or a little, like a, you know, a trinket or something, or there's some, you know, there's usually hardworking immigrant vendors that are, you know, doing that to support their families. But like, is this kind of like either like banning the vendors altogether or not doing anything, as opposed to something in the middle where like what some of the
And
people.
let me say it one more time. The rules used to imply you couldn't do it. The police felt it was not enforceable.
Right.
The DOT still stands by, they don't want them for multiple reasons. Obviously different, there are a lot of bridges.
I
so they must
understand.
be different. They want to make it very clear and say, no vending, this is for mobility.
See, I don't like the all or nothing. I mean, I like,
And you can
it's gotten out of
comment on that.
hand, but does that, like, then everybody gets penalized. The some people that have been good actors, have been good responsible people, as opposed to the, pedestrians and vendors that are using some of the bike lane as their trash barrel and everything, so now we gotta penalize everybody. I'm just afraid of the all or nothing approach, as opposed to controlling it some way. I don't have the answer, but,
Well, let's let Tammy go and then
Okay.
you can speak again.
Okay, so does anybody have a map of what part is considered the ruling, covered in the ruling in terms of what is elevated and what is not? Has DOT, like, how do we know which parts are elevated and which ones are considered not elevated? So Pat and I were having this discussion earlier today. Does that mean the parts of the bridge that do not have the ground below it as that elevated? So then the vendors would still be at the beginning of, for example, Center Street up way until it becomes suspension? That's kind of one of the things that I would certainly love to have clarity on. That's my first question. My second question is, there will be a lot of vendors who are moved, which God bless America, but thank God, because it is really dangerous on there for pedestrians and bicyclists. It's just not safe, right? And so providing a better pathway for safety and security with the rise of tourism, the rise of people walking, and everything that comes with it has got to be a good thing. So I'm sorry, I get where you got, Mitch, but this is what happens. You can't have nice things when people don't follow the rules. But where are those additional vendors going to go? We know that they are going to go onto our sidewalks and our surrounding streets.
Across the street, yeah.
So my question is, where does DOT land on that? Is DOT the part that maps out where the vendors can go? I know that it used to be Consumer Affairs gives the license, but who's mapping out where these people are going to go? That's one of the things that I would like to know. I think it's a great idea. It's a great concept. I'd like to know exactly where it applies and where are these people going to go afterwards.
I'll just say that I believe that would fall under the street license, the street vendor license, and just in regards to the rulemaking process, I'm not able to speak in depth to the questions that are being asked tonight because of the City Administrative Procedure Act, or CAPA.
There's too many agencies that.
Yep, so that basically dictates that the rules are public for comment, online and online, and you can comment by written testimony to DOT or by hearing. But I can't go into a discussion now with the community board about the proposed rules, and that also goes for outdoor dining as well. Because that would create another channel for feedback outside of the CAPA process.
Sounds like the HIPAA rules.
I get that, Kate. That's cool. Can you at least confirm or deny if a map exists as to how the definition of elevated roadway is there one somewhere that we can look at? I understand. Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing on this HIPAA CAPA thing, but pretty funny analogy, but
I would have to check. I would have to check if we have that.
Just as a matter of public engagement and transparency, if you get that, then we'll circulate that to the full board. I think that's really good value information.
Across the street, on the bridge side, that's where we start, I would just think.
Okay, and keep in mind, you don't have to agree with each other because everyone would have to submit your own individual comment anyway.
Which I'm going to do. I have just a quick follow-up. One thing about the proliferation of vendors on the bridge, it does take away from the majesty and the aesthetic of the bridge itself, which is so beautiful. And to have like the open space is just like, just taking in New York without the interference of vendors. But the other thing I was gonna say, and following up on what Eric said about enforcement.
Actually, yes, in a second. Just going on to what Cody said, I want to remind people that I'm as short as maybe 9 and 10-year-olds, actually more like 8-year-olds. And I can tell you, my vision is completely blocked when you have a vendor standing behind a table. Because it's not only the depth, it's not only the height, it's the depth that goes out there.
Right.
And I can't have any views at all. So people like me and children
Sure.
have zero views because they completely obscure it.
So I'm just curious, to ask you and Cody, I agree with both of you, so, but would you be in favor of banning 100% of the vendors as opposed?
Well, this rule,
What?
it's this rule and not this
We all
rule.
can weigh in, so we don't need.
But I'm just curious, just for my own curiosity, and information. I agree with what you said before about the beauty and the aesthetics of it. So that being said, would you be in favor, just a friendly, curiosity of banning 100% of the vendors?
On the elevator, where the wood starts for sure, and
Okay.
like,
Okay.
Yeah, the
absolutely,
Esplanade, and that's really what they're talking
Okay.
about.
yeah.
But it's also the entryway to the Esplanade, because they don't want them moving just there, so you can't get onto the Esplanade either.
Which is so bad.
So I guess it gets back to where Tammy's point
Yes,
is,
no,
where
if
does
you
that
look at the
start?
word, the
Right,
name of it.
right.
Okay.
I mean,
I have to go back.
it's just,
Okay,
I mean,
that's cool.
I remember,
If you look at the name of the rule.
yeah, like,
Pat has her hand up.
Yeah, I told her
Thank
she
you.
knows, Mitch is done.
Yeah, so, most of you know, and Betty just said that we had this topic in quality of life, and we tried to get, for several meetings, we tried to get the police in to discuss enforcement. Eric, I totally agree with you. And supposedly the precincts in Brooklyn, on the Brooklyn side, are responsible for enforcing all of the rules on the bridge. That's what we were told.
Right,
So
yes.
I don't understand, I'm sorry. I don't understand why enforcement, and I think that all of the vendors should be off of the bridge, the entranceway to the bridge and on the bridge. It is a hazard. I think it's unfair to vendors who can't, there should be street space for the vendors, and it should all be on a level playing field. I think that the vendors who are on the bridge have access to all the people walking, across the bridge, where other vendors don't have access to those people. But they all need to be off of the bridge, and the police need to enforce the rule, which is that there's no vending on the bridge.
Those are nice headphones.
Yes, well, I hope you make a comment. So let's go on with the slides, so I'll give you a little bit of a hint on how to do that. Sorry, we'll get there. Yeah, but what you'll see, you can either email, fax, or mail. And keep in mind that each of these resolutions are gonna have a different person to mail to if that's your interest. But as far as the email, or as far as how to get to a public hearing, go to the New York City rules page and you can get it that
It
way.
would be nice that if somehow the police on the New York side could have a little more authority in enforcing this side of the bridge, because instead of the.
They do only the entry that way though. As far as the public hearing for this particular item, this is what it looks like when you click on that on New York City rules. So you can either sign up to speak, or you can simply go and connect virtually to it if you want to observe and listen. So those links are also available on New York City rules. Next. Also, you'll get the thing where you can make a comment directly on New York City rules and read what other people have entered. As many things you've said, I've seen already posted. So it's always interesting to look at those. And again, by just providing your email and your name, you can either type in your comments in that box, or you can attach a document. That's going to be your choice to make. And again, it's just rules.cityofnewyork.us. But if you Google New York City NYC rules, you always get exactly to this page. Next. Yeah, so I hope you submit. If there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on because boy, this is gonna take forever. Because the next one has 3 different programs that we talk about. Open culture, open street event, and extension of the street fair moratorium. So you may want to opine or comment on one or all of them. Everybody can do whatever you choose to do.
That's got a different date.
And it's November 20th for this one.
What's open culture, Betty?
I'm gonna go
Okay,
go to each of them. When you click on it, that hypertext, you get, it's open culture program, open street events, and extension of street fair moratorium. Again, this is SAPO, that is putting forth this rule. And November 20th, you can see the comment date is going to be there, as well as you're gonna get to the full rule. Want to read every detail. But taking some of the short part of it, for the open culture program, this is based on a law that was passed in 2023, which is why you're not really familiar with it, Mitch. None of us are. This is the rule being created to implement a law that was passed. And that often is what happens. Many laws are authorizing a division to make the rules to create the program with some really rough parameters around it. And that's this particular case. So really what they want is a year to put together what is the program and create the rules for it. So keep an eye out for when the rules come out, because you may want to opine on the actual rules. The open street events, this sort of came up in a discussion about Market Street School. You remember the little children, and they talked about, well, we have an open street on Staple Street. We don't use it very often anymore, but we want to have a pumpkin parade for our little children. Where they say, don't call it a parade or we get SAPO involved. So any kind of event that's done on an open street has to go through the whole SAPO process as well. So this is trying to clarify some of those details. Because sometimes it can get a little ridiculous with having a small group of preschoolers walk around with mom and dad clapping is not really the kind of event you're thinking about when you think about a big event on the street. Nevertheless, SAPO wants to formalize the rules around it, which has to do with costs, has to do with how much difficulty, what you need to do. So that's really why they want the time. Again, it's gonna be something we can opine on later, but you can certainly make comment on about your wishes. The street fair moratorium more directly affects CB1, and I'm gonna let Tammy speak on this, because that's where a lot of the discretionary money that the community board has to hire some of the temporary workers we've had has come from money that they raised from a street fair. And in fact, that's why there's a task force for street fairs. It was suspended in 2023. This is saying they want to suspend it again in calendar year 2024. The reason for this one is the NYPD has asked for it, saying we are already stretched too thin with all of these things going on in all of these streets. So if you did it in 2023 or 2022, fine, you can have a permit. You did not participate in a street activity during those previous years, hence since COVID. This will be a moratorium and you can't submit or be considered in 2024. That's the issue, which is very different than the other two. And yeah, does Tammy have her hand up?
I didn't see it.
We had a street fair in 2023.
the BQE
No.
1950.
No, she doesn't.
She doesn't. It was a street fair?
That's so cool.
Then I don't, then it shouldn't apply to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay, so that's multi, I'm telling you how ignorant I am on CB1.
Although our budget, so the budget, maybe we need to look at the video again, but the budget from the last full board meeting included street fair money. So
But that was carried from previous years, so that's with their new money.
I don't believe it was carried from previous years. I thought that we were tight on money for a few years because we couldn't have a street fair because of COVID.
Tammy, did you answer, was there an actual street fair for CB1?
She's probably away from her computer.
She has her camera off. She's having trouble.
Sorry, were you looking for me?
Yes, did you do a street fair for CB1 in 2023 or 2022?
Yes, of course. We've had street fairs 22, 23. We have them planned for 24. Yes.
I was gonna say, so this wouldn't affect us at all either.
Not at all. It does not. And I apologize. I heard you calling my name and I was like, what's happening? You don't need to see me cooking. I'm just going to put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You clarified the one point that none of us were completely sure about. So thank you.
Let's make a resolution without cooking.
No, it's not a resolution, it's comments.
I know, just-
I usually make people watch
When you're
football all
looking
the
at it,
time.
you don't have to have a personal thing about, but at least allow CB1 to have their street fairs. You can comment about others and read the comments.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, we have a street fair task force that has always handled our street fairs. And Daron is on it, and Joe Girardi actually is coming next month to give us an update. So it's just before exec, I think. He comes every day.
Yes, I did, but no one spoke about the plans or that it was. Anyway, I confirmed that this rule does not apply to CB1, so it gets around that.
I don't agree with that. So they're saying they want to not allow groups that didn't have it before to have a street, get a SAPO permit. But we have auxiliary cops too, right? They can do it. I didn't know that it's that intense for police to provide coverage. And I'm surprised they can't find it in their budget. And I think that's what makes the neighborhood more interesting to have these events. I don't agree with that statement.
It's a moratorium. It's not a permanent. It's a temporary.
But how long has it been in effect? And they want to extend it, right?
It was in effect in 2023. I can tell you that particular one was. So this would be the second year of that. And before that, I think I don't know, people didn't apply because of COVID, or they put a moratorium kind of on a lot of the outside activities.
So if the budget constraint is legitimate, it shouldn't be based on people who had it before. It should be based on what the event is. It shouldn't be based just because they had it in the past that they can have it again. It should be based on the merits of the event.
Again, these are individual comments, and in fact, you'll see some very similar to that already posted as comments. Especially, I know there's some by nonprofits saying, hey, give us a break already. So you're still not alone on that point of view. You don't need agreement for anyone else to make it.
Slightly unrelated, is it possible per chance to get these
I have to be out at 9:30. It goes from place 4 9:30 tomorrow.
B1 email?
The links were in the, remember I sent an email at the beginning of the week about this meeting? And I said, agenda item 1, agenda item 2, agenda item 3.
And I'm going to send them all out afterwards, Betty. Betty's done an amazing job with all this. We'll send it to the full board as well.
Right, but if you still have that email from, it started out really incorrectly. I must have done it on Tuesday because I said, happy election day, thinking, oh, we're delayed because of that. But of course it was last month, so it was election day, next Tuesday is. But I know I sent it on a Tuesday of this week.
You sent it this previous Tuesday, like a couple days ago.
Yeah, it was on a Tuesday.
It's hard to tell.
So you'll find it, and the links are in it with each of these three. That'll help get you directly to that particular issue. So you can comment directly there, read it, do whatever you want using that one link. Okay? Great, so I encourage everyone, please, to make a comment if you have any thoughts on it. The opportunity to do it and experience. Next. Which isn't. And Kate, I'm sorry about this, and she's already warned you, she can't speak about this, because she's in the last period. But again, a public hearing, and what you could do, next slide. Outdoor dining, New York City, because the rules have come out. And this is November 20th. So again, you can make individual comments and you have the link to do that. But if you also look at the DOT website and the dining out New York City website, that's where these things came from. I didn't make them up and I really can't draw it all. But anyway, this is a hypothetical sidewalk setup. The black ones are the ones that are required. The ones that are kind of in a gray box are things that are not mandatory but can be done. So to answer some of your questions about, yes, they can have electricity. Yes, they are gonna have some barriers around them. They don't have to have plants. So a lot of those questions could be answered simply by looking at the picture. They cannot be sheds because they have to be open on the side, but then they sort of take that back in a little bit anyway. Anyway, that's the hypothetical picture the DOT is showing. And there are a whole list, which I'm not gonna go through all of them, but what I found interestingly, Kate, I have no idea, but it's no longer on the website. So I happened to go on a day when they still had this on the website, but it's not there anymore, because I looked today all over and I couldn't find it.
These bullets?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
And it's very clearly, because I double checked myself to say, is it really about open dining, not the old program? And they specifically say open dining, and these are for the new program and are the new rules being proposed. But nevertheless, I couldn't find it again, but they've disappeared. I couldn't find it again.
It's too small for me to see from here.
Well, anyway, there's an 8-foot clear path for pedestrians that's provided. The clear path, well, there's some details there.
But there's no enforcement.
Well, the DOT is gonna be doing the enforcement, which previously was not, there weren't the rules to do it.
Okay.
So we can be hopeful and we have a mechanism at least for complaining or reporting. And there are a lot more things put in about the seating area, may not exceed the business frontage. Some used to kind of go all out. There are more parameters that are listed. I really want to go through all of them. There's just so many of them. They do address some of the things that have been brought up, such as they deal with, they must not be placed within or over city tree beds. So they do factor in tree beds. They do factor in drainage sites and other things that people were concerned about. So some of that has been added. You go to the next, everything has to be movable. Also, the pedestrian plan is in place for some of the questions I heard, like what is a clear path? You'll see the darker red here is clear path versus the walk lane, which is more of a pink area. Why? Because there can be some signage and other things, which you can see in the picture within that pink area. But the red area should have nothing blocking it, that you can walk straight along the whole width of that stretch. And then, so you know what a furnishing zone is, that's where all the other stuff is. That's between the curb and the clear path.
Like what?
There's signs, there are tree beds, there are, in Battery Park City, they have cobblestone or bricks. I mean, it's not walkable. I certainly can't use them. But so there's various things, but it's not what you would consider a clear path, that's why. And the question of, does it have to be a completely straight line? No, actually, it can veer off as long as it's not sharp turns. It would compress people too much in making them. So this is all, again, on the DOT website, so you can see that. Hope that clarifies a little bit of what their path is and what it isn't. Next. Also, pedestrian mobility team has been working a lot and has a pedestrian mobility. I was able to get a picture grabbed for our district, or most of our district. And so when they talk about things like global, regional, neighborhood streets, this is where they show how they've rated them. The global ones, you'll notice quite interestingly, means people from all over the world, tourists and other people, heavily used. I mean, it's business, it's people from out of the area, it's all kinds of people, and large volume. That is the most demanding. Regional means you still get people from outside the district and even outside New York City, but versus neighborhood where you're going to be from the district or the community itself, down to community where it may be one person passing another occasionally. Anyway, if you look at it, places like Fidei with the smallest streets and the smallest sidewalks are already listed on the pedestrian mobility as being the most used and heavily used by pedestrians. We're not talking congestion, we're talking about heavily used, just sheer numbers. Keep that in mind when they refer to these terms. Okay, clear path. This is from the rule itself. I just plain screen grabbed from the rule. This is one thing I want to point out. It's sidewalk or sidewalk widening, which is the painted area outside the curb on the street bed adjoining to widen the sidewalk. It's done a lot in Midtown. It's done on State Street in our district and probably some others, but you know, that's what it is. You'll see here they're referring to those kinds of corridors I just spoke about, global, regional, neighborhood. Now keep in mind, 12 feet for global is a joke at Fidei because they don't have 12 feet of sidewalk. They certainly can't have 12 feet of pedestrian.
Right.
But, I mean, they can't have it. Nevertheless, there is a minimum so-called of 8 feet, even for the most underutilized roads anywhere in the city. This is all New York City-wide rating, which would still be a challenge in many areas of Tribeca.
So if there's gonna be DOT enforcement, I'm just like hypothetically, and there's physically not 12 feet that, and the restaurant is taking, is going past that, but it's physically impossible not to, could that be, I hope it's not a mechanism to just, get some money in the city coffers for like fines that are physically impossible to not have.
Now, what it says is, and help me with the wording on this, because there's no preference here. When they're talking about these small streets where there is obviously inadequate space, even for these minimums, they're allowed to have small seating areas or small table space. I mean, there's a term for it. They have a special case for these small, narrow areas where they're allowed to have small, so they have different rules, but not no rules.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. It just, sometimes when I see like some delivery truck that has nowhere else to deliver, and then the parking enforcement guy is giving a ticket, and it's like, they're just, like, they know it's part of the game, and it's like, what is somebody supposed to do? So I just.
Right, so if you have an opinion, write it, otherwise
No.
I very much
Just
guess.
curious, that's all.
Once these licenses start going out and these permanent setups start being created, we're gonna have to take a look at some of these and see what really works and what really doesn't work. And it may require that some of the streets change, say if it's a shared street, something to give, who are we seeking more space for? And how do we suggest getting it? So I expect that's going to happen. So much. Next. And this is my personal, because you go back to it. Remember I said it's sidewalk plus the extended sidewalk? And they talk about the path can be on either of them. That's great if you can walk and climb curbs. If you can't climb curbs because you have wheels, it really sucks.
Right.
So, by including sidewalk widening, which is the painted area on the roadbed along the curb, the rule does not guarantee that wheelchair users or any pedestrian with a wheeled device, whether it's a delivery cart, a stroller, a suitcase, a walker, etc., any of them would have access to all of the buildings on the block. Because technically, the space allowed to the business could take up the whole elevated sidewalk. And you're kind of stuck. You can roll up to their space and then get off the curb and get down onto the painted space. And like, how do you go to the next door? If you're coming from the other direction, how do you even get into the restaurant itself? Because you can't get to the door. All these tables and chairs are blocking.
So what, from your point of view, then what would be a comment that, like, obviously,
Well, this is going to be my comment.
Okay.
So they should have, pedestrian ramps are too often blocked by vehicles, absent, or are a distance away. Pedestrians must be able to pass a sidewalk cafe on the raised portion of the sidewalk.
Okay.
End of story. It would be unreasonable to expect people, including people with disabilities, to have to go longer distances to reach a destination because they're reliant on the curb cuts. So, same thing with, if you're pushing a delivery cart to go to a business or go to a residence that's on the other side, what are they gonna do? Go back to the corner, go down the ramp, push down to the next,
No, I
go
agree.
the full block and then go up and then come back again? I mean, there's gotta be a way of passing if you have a wheel device.
Agreed.
So that's gonna be my personal comment and people to consider it. For the consent process, because I know people are gonna be interested in this too, when it comes to, we're talking sidewalks now, right? So sidewalk cafe, the DOT has 5 days of a request or a filing to respond about that location for that restaurant. Next, we go on. The Landmarks Preservation Commission has to be informed if it's you can see if it's located within a historic district, it's located on a landmark site, it's attached to a landmark, or it's attached to an improvement containing an interior landmark. They have 10 days. That's important because you want to know how much overlap the CB has after they can hear what the landmarks has to say, because I'm sure it's going to be of interest. So next, the community board has 40 days for sidewalk setups after receipt of a petition. So it's not from the day the DOT receives it, but from the day they have receipt of the petition, they have 40 days. And we can either notify the public, we can either opine or not opine, is what it boils down to. And the 40 days, that gives us plenty of time for 10 days for the Landmarks Commission to make a decision and still have 30 left before there's a final vote to make a decision. So that's not a bad time frame.
I have a question on that. That means that it would come to the community board, but the community board would wait for usually an LPC opinion, or when we get stuff from LPC, we opine and send back to them. So are we cut out of the LPC part of it?
I didn't read those specifics. You'd have to go to the rule and specifically look at that. I did not. Certainly, once you're going to get it, the CB, not you, but should get it at least as early as they do. And so you certainly could anticipate and get to them, but you have to move pretty quickly because they only have 10 days. And again, they said after 5 days, DOT must notify the CB as well as the elected officials and some others, and the Landmarks Commission. So yes, there would be a 10-day overlap potentially, and the CB would have to be pretty nimble to act if they want to talk to Landmarks. Otherwise, within 10 days, hearing what Landmarks says, they still have 30 more days to fine tune whatever they want to do with the resolution. Next. After that, the DOT is the department. They have to hold a public hearing if the community board submitted a recommendation to deny the petition, which is kind of interesting. Or if the community board has submitted a recommendation to approve the petition with substantial modifications, the DOT for sidewalk seating would also need to hold a public hearing. And the third case where they'd have to do it is if the department, DOT itself determines such a hearing would be beneficial to address concerns about the effect of the sidewalk cafe on proposed locations, which means probably responses to other people making comments to them. Now, so you realize they're different. This is a hypothetical roadway, and these rules are specific to roadway. They don't treat the two the same. So you can get a picture of it, and again, it's not a shed. Sheds aren't allowed. There can be umbrellas, there can be an overhead, so people are concerned about rain. But it does get a little bit dicier, it does get a little bit more complicated than that. Next, just keep in mind, there may or may not be a bicycle lane between the curb and these road beds. It just depends on location. And again, this isn't even all to look at. I'm certainly not going to read all of these rules, but anybody who wants them, I will certainly send them to you. And certainly they're in No, these, I think I actually got off the DOT website. But they are included in the rules, it's just not as straightforward.
So you're saying that in some locations there would be a dining shed and then a bike lane in front of it? And
Don't
then
say shed. just
Sorry,
say zone.
a dining
Setup,
thing
yes.
set up. And then a bike lane, and so the servers would have to be walking through a bike lane to get to the,
Just as there are now, just as they are with the temporary programs.
is there
Yeah.
something like that in the
Ninth
district?
Avenue has that all.
But it's illegal according to state law, so I'm really, like, how is this possible?
East
We could
Village
have it here,
too.
though.
Yeah.
Okay, Ellen, she's asking in our district, can anyone
Yeah.
think of an
Oh,
example?
okay.
Yeah, I just
I can't.
eat here. Apparently.
But that doesn't mean there wouldn't be one in the
From
future.
42nd to 57th Street on Ninth Avenue, the whole way.
Meaning it's any place that there's floating parking versus curbside parking. But the problem is, according to SLA law, it is illegal to serve a car across a traffic lane.
Mm.
How does the server get there?
Oh, really?
They look
Well,
and they.
that's a service alcohol. That's right, just set up.
So you can't like walk
It's a
a
problem
glass
for
of
both.
alcohol
The
across
servers
any
have
sort of lane
bicycles.
to give it to
It's really,
a
it's like
patron?
a class.
Sounds like actually, well, the customer themselves probably could.
It's so scary.
Oh, yeah, I mean like the server.
Because it was,
Well, that's what she's saying, if
It'll,
we're
it'll
getting
be
down,
things
there
in
with
the
the
same
guy like
place.
walking it across.
Right.
I'm not saying beach.
if that's an issue, we may want to include that in your comments.
I mean, it's just curious. I didn't realize that that was a thing, because I haven't seen it.
It endangers. You got to think about all the electric bikes going up and down the bike lanes, and the electric mopeds. It's flat out dangerous for the servers.
Yeah.
Or the gas mopeds.
Yeah.
And usually like at
Well, but
night.
then you can
it's mainly
decide,
the
it should
delivery
even be
people.
allowed or not, I mean, you can, it's a
At night,
comment,
it's
so you
mainly
can
the
make any
delivery-
comment
the
you want.
delivery electric
Yeah,
cars.
I didn't realize
Sure.
that.
You know, like late at night.
The bike lane, whoever's on the bike lane trying to swerve into pedestrian.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't want to run over the way that.
When I cross
So
the
keep
street
in
now, I
mind,
have
and like I
four
said, if anyone wants any of these bullets or even a copy of access to the slides, you can certainly have it. Because you'll see next slide, just you see how many there are, I'm certainly not gonna read them all, you don't wanna hear them all. But some of it is reiterated with, in terms of the heaters and other things that were on the sidewalk. Some things are actually different. So if you go to the next, what I thought was more interesting, because people have brought it up many times before, for heaters, electric radiant heaters are allowed on the sidewalk and on the roadway. Natural gas radiant heaters are allowed only on the sidewalk. Propane heaters are no longer allowed anywhere. Amplified sound, not allowed anywhere, sidewalk or road. And that includes audio speakers, TVs, and live music.
Question real quick. So the slide before this, it said snow event? I thought this wasn't going to be around for snow.
It can always be early or late snow.
Okay.
I think they're just covering it in case.
Okay.
But you'll get the date soon, because I know that. Again, there's been a repeat interest. Yeah, that's, and the one after that. The hours of operation, again, if you see the underline, that's because this is the rule itself. And the way New York City rule works, because some of them are not completely new rules like this is, they want to show what's new versus what existed before, and so they underline it. Everything here is underlined because it's all new. But that's how you can tell it's the rule that I just screen grabbed. For maintenance, temporary outdoor dining setups. Now keep in mind temporary because they're gonna be closed down for winter, not because we're talking about the old program. Setups should be clean, well maintained, clear of trash, debris, graffiti, vermin, food scraps, and unsanitary conditions.
The people that
You
are
can
smoking outside
But you
can't
can
go
file
outside to smoke.
complaints on any of these things. And as I've shown you before, DOT, you can complain on their website, you can report things on their social media and get some responses to it. But it's their rule, so sanitation is probably not the preferred person to contact about this particular issue. DOT seems like they're gonna take responsibility for this, unless they direct you otherwise. The hours, you can see what they are, and you can opine what you like or don't like about them. Alcohol consumption, Again, they're sticking to the state liquor authority rules. So if you're concerned about the bike lane and crossing, that's an SLA rule, and so DOT is completely deferring to the SLA when it comes to alcohol. For no smoking, and that's why that committee is important for their stipulations, and that's some of the CD leverage. As far as smoking is concerned, smoking and using electronic cigarettes are prohibited within outdoor dining setups or subdivision, according to subdivision. If you want some of that more specific, include cannabis or others, I feel it's not clear enough. Again, feel free to comment on any suggestions or
Well,
changes.
shouldn't smoking include all smoking? So whether it's, that, to me, that would, I see
And
smoking,
that's why I think it is.
I would think it would be everything.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Some people might say, well, it doesn't cover vaping.
I mean,
But it says electronic cigarettes, right? Isn't that?
if it doesn't say cigarettes, it just says smoking, so to me, that's
Well, I was
everything.
gonna say, I think they cover everything,
Yeah.
but you're gonna see in the comments when you read them, you're gonna see all kinds.
Okay.
And you can write whatever you want. Next. Yes, again, it has to be a ground floor restaurant, which again was in previous CB1 resolutions, that this was important to them. And yes, it is in the permanent rules, that the restaurant has to be on the first floor to be eligible for the program. The dates are here, and so I took them down at the bottom to make it simpler than reading all this text. For roadway dining, they can be operational, you have customers from March 31st to November 30th. The other dates, March 24th and December 7th, that's a time period for setup or tear down. Can't have any customers during that period, but they give a grace period of a week at either end, because it is temporary and everything has to be created and taken apart. Okay, and that's pretty much in alignment with past CB1 resolutions. And for those that are concerned, you'll also see the pictures of, yes, they are looking to work it in with all the other curb uses. And so there are a lot of rules now about how far you have to be from the corners, how far you have to be from other vendors, how far you have to be from all kinds of things. And this kind of highlights a lot of that for those who like to see pictures. Next. Oh, and the time frame is different for road. Everything's different for roads. In this case, the DOT has not 5 days, but 10 days before they make a determination and send it out to the elected officials and the CDs. The comment period, instead of being is 30 days after receipt, so it's a little bit shorter. So the total time for the restaurant's the same, but it means the DOT has a little bit more time, the CD has a little bit less time for 30 days. Keep track of that. Yeah, and there aren't many reasons why the DOT has to have a public hearing after that. Nevertheless, if you're gonna renew, and I think it's a 4-year period that you are, that each period that you have, and yes, you are paying each year, not only to apply, but also for the use of the space, and it is based on the square footage that you have
Betty,
assigned.
before you go on, I just want to encourage every single community board member to comment on the community board period. 30 days is not long enough for the business of the board. Business of the board needs to be 60 days. So I'm just putting it out there for everybody to make sure that they should comment, because there's also nothing that I've seen that puts this in relation to their SLA license. And that's something else that should be coordinated so they come to us together.
Yes, so do keep all those things in mind, and that's why I pointed out the time frames are different. And keep in mind when you're commenting, road dining is different than sidewalk dining setups. So you may want to be specific unless you agree, same problem with both, then you can put the two together. Next. So some of the unanswered questions, from what I could find reading it, were there's no mention of adequate toilets to meet the plumbing code if all diners inside and outside are considered for seating capacity. for those who want to consider that. For outdoor seating capacity, we originally had in a resolution, they didn't want it to exceed a certain percent of the inside capacity because they wanted to prevent, T1 wanted to prevent businesses from being mostly conducted outside except for the kitchen. So if that's a concern, consider that. No explicit mention of all restaurant activities, including customer lines and service activities, must occur within the allotted space. It may be assumed, I could not find it explicitly stated that it had to be. And as we found with the Brooklyn, with the bridge, when it's not explicit, it's not really terribly enforceable, even by the agency that's charged with doing that. And it's unclear to us, and I can see why, how narrow sidewalks will allow adequate clear path. And a typical pedestrian volume, not to mention the high volume.
That's what we had, we brought up before.
Right. So especially if there are signs and trees, are exempt from the clear area, so that's another issue you might want to think about. That has been raised by the community board members in the past. Anything else? Because we're past 9, and I know most of us are sleepy.
So was that also November 20th deadline?
Yes,
Yes.
that's November 20th as well.
So are we gonna be inundated with a lot of these in a year or something like that?
Can you remember the date? They can't right now, the DOT website says they are not issuing any more permits for the old program.
That's
So you can only apply to the open dining. So if you're a new business, you certainly have no choice. Would anybody with the old system actually come up for renewal during this period, or no, they really wouldn't anyway? So it would only be new
From
business.
what I understand, the restaurants that are in the current program will have a period to come up to speed with the new rules and reapply for the new program.
I think the law allows them until the end of 2024, or close to the end of 2024.
That's correct, yeah.
So they might trickle in over time.
Yes.
Okay. But everybody has to apply. They have to reapply.
They will have to.
We'll have to apply for the new program. Because right now they're operating under the old rules. So yes, and that's why I said some of it, we're gonna have to look at some of these narrow streets, especially in historic districts and Tribeca and Fidei to see, what does it really plan out to look like? Because once we find out who's going to apply and what is set up so loud and what they choose to do, I don't think even the DOT doesn't exactly know. We're gonna have to kind of take a look at it. Plan a strategy, no question. But you can certainly comment on the things that really concern you now during this open comment period.
It's gonna be hard to make one blanket rule because it's one size doesn't fit all in this situation.
Well, and that is part of the problem, especially with the unique neighborhoods with very narrow streets and very narrow
Yeah.
sidewalks.
Can I ask Kate a question based on the current program? I know she can't comment about the rulemaking on the new one.
Sure.
Anything in the current program for the people who have existing sheds that they will have, I know is there any kind of variance that was offered in the current program in terms of structures, or do they have to adhere 100% to the new guidelines? Is there any grandfathering, anything like that?
Not in the law.
I'm not certain if we're grandfathering them in, so I would have to check that.
Yeah, because the rule does not mention that, and the law does not mention that.
Which is why I'm asking, because I haven't seen anything, and I know that especially around our neighborhood, there are lots that have 4 walls and sliding glass doors and televisions and all kinds of things inside.
Yes, well, they can't be enclosed, it states that in the rule. They then say they allow some tents and some enclosed, some of those domes, those clear domes, which I know they had on VC Street, one of the restaurants had them. Very annoying.
Yeah.
But those are allowed, so it's not exactly what you're thinking when they say no sheds or no enclosed structures, because some of these things appear very enclosed. such as the domes.
Those are the
Or the tents.
private dining pods.
Yeah, so again, if you want to comment on that and ask that that be clarified, because it doesn't seem very open, that's another thing.
But people that are smoking in the outside dining area have to go outside as well. I mean, I hate smoking, but I'm just saying some of the way they put some of these rules out, it's.
Yes, and in the rule, it is explicit too, that if a dining setup is not used for 30 days in a row, it has to be removed. If it isn't, right now, the Department of Sanitation is charged with just taking those things apart. So if you have one of the existing sheds in your area and it hasn't been operated for 30 days, you can tweet, you can contact DSNY any way you want. The Department of Sanitation will remove it and has done it.
Betty, can I ask Kate a question on that?
Sure.
If there is a current shed, it's not a shed. If there's a current elevated platform with a fence around it, let's call it that. It's on a sidewalk. It's an elevated platform that was used for sidewalk dining. The restaurant is no longer in business. Who takes that down? And where does it get reported?
Abandoned sheds, like you just described, could be reported to 311, and DOT and DSNY have been removing abandoned and derelict sheds.
Well, I want to mention too, in the new rules, the new program, sidewalk setups cannot be elevated. So any of those elevated platforms go. Again, for accessibility reasons, it makes sense.
Agreed. I didn't want to reflect it back to the new up and coming rulemaking because I know Kate can't answer anything on that. So I'm really trying to understand. Yeah. I'm trying to just understand to the current to see what we can do with that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, if there's nothing else, but you know other hands. Oh, you have the slides? You have to see this last slide because I couldn't believe it. It's my adjournment slide. You just keep going till the end. Yeah, there's actually a street treatment going in because somebody requested it and the DOT has approved it. It's gonna be on Spruce Street, between William and Gold Street. They're gonna put in, you go back, get the exact words the DOT uses.
Oh, what? Oh, they're putting, seriously?
I can't read it.
They have speed bumps there already.
Oh. Yeah, so they're doing treatment, so people had asked, no, it doesn't have to come from just the community board, there are different ways of asking the DOT directly to do things. And so there are gonna be some changes there. For people who have children in the school that's on the next block, anybody has any comments about how it is or is not affecting traffic, by all means, let us know. What the response
There's
is.
gonna be construction there for years though, right?
Yeah, there will be. Anyway, next, going with the green ride, and Cody, we will get back to that, but keep going. You can see the last slide, because it's very quirky. Oh, yeah, that was, Cody, you want more, bike stuff? This one's put up by the World Bollard Association. Is this a bollard or is it a bike? And so there are ways of combining some of these things. but
That's brilliant.
So I thought you kind of get a chuckle out of that. The next one, look at.
Love that.
This is a historic picture. This is what happens to spiders when you put them under different things. You put them in marijuana. It's again interesting. Don't know exactly what it means, except that these are pre-programmed neurologically. They're not something you consciously think of. But look at how disarranged their webs become under these different trees. I think there was someone sat there and actually tormented these spiders. But I thought at least you'd laugh, given how late it is before you get
Like that commercial, this is the drug, this is your brain on drugs.
Maybe we shouldn't be drinking caffeine.
I don't get worked up.
I mean, you nicotine.
Almost
Now,
pictures
that's
of
a
you.
question.
This one-
Are we officially adjourned?
Yeah.
Yeah.